Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. Matt and Leah here with you. On today's programme, the medical world turns on Donald Trump after he tells pregnant women that paracetamol causes autism.
Plus, the world's best player, Ousmane Dembele, wins the Ballon d'Or. But why did England's Chloe Kelly only finish 5th on the women's list?
It is Tuesday, September the 23rd. Experts tell pregnant women that paracetamol will not harm your baby after Donald Trump links painkillers with autism. France becomes the latest nation to formally recognise a Palestinian state. Also this morning, a special report on the UK's only dedicated national support service for survivors of childhood abuse.
Here at the Liberal Democrat conference in Bournemouth, Sir Ed Davey, in his speech to conference later today, will urge US cancer scientists to come to the UK.
And charities drop the Duchess of York over her gushing messages to notorious predator Jeffrey Epstein. Will the palace be next to cut its ties? Good morning, good to have you with us. Now, Donald Trump has come under fire from medical experts after saying that paracetamol taken during pregnancy can then cause autism in a child. The US president said expectant mums should only take over-the-counter painkillers if they have an extremely high fever that you can't tough out, in his words. The UK's medicines watchdog reiterated its advice that taking paracetamol during pregnancy does not harm your baby. In the US, it's commonly known as Tylenol.
Tylenol during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good. For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary.
You know, ever since RFK Jr. was appointed to run the health brief in the US government, things have gone in a different direction, I think it's fair to say. But it occurs to me, having never been a pregnant mum myself, that pregnant mums the world over get bombarded with all sorts of messages and advice, don't they?
Yeah, it's a hugely vulnerable time, and the care of that little one inside your tummy is at the utmost. But, you know, just point people to the very latest data that came out of Sweden. It was, you know, recorded at 2.4 million births between 2015 2019. There was no link to autism and paracetamol use. So the medical world rebuked all of this, and will continue to do that. In the meantime, the safest thing for women to do is to take paracetamol in small doses as and when they need it.
Yes, yes. I mean, there was another study, I think this is where the Americans seem to be taking their advice from a Harvard study that casts a bit of doubt. But you're right, other studies seem to have superseded that since, bigger studies as well. But I saw a message from a friend this morning who's a mum who has an autistic son saying, I'm now having to explain to him that I didn't take paracetamol when I was pregnant with him because people are seeing this story. Our US correspondent David Blevins was listening to that announcement in the US and sent us this.
Even by Donald Trump's standards, his language around autism is unusually emotive. Phrases like, "we've found an answer on autism," suggesting it is artificially induced and framing this as a major medical breakthrough. But there is such a disconnect between that kind of rhetoric and the scientific evidence on this. He's telling people not to take acetaminophen, which is marketed as Tylenol here in America and paracetamol elsewhere when they're pregnant, and suggesting that a drug normally used to treat cancer could be used to treat the symptoms of autism in such a matter-of-fact way. People are likening this to the moment back in 2020 when he appeared to suggest that disinfectant could be placed inside the human body to beat COVID-19. Under fire from the medical world, he's also under scrutiny for the timing of these remarks politically. His administration wants to be seen to implement policy, and a bold move on autism resonates emotionally with families. There's a populist element. It taps into that huge Make America Healthy Again movement, people worried about environmental toxins and the influence of pharmaceutical companies. And it capitalises upon the reputation of his health secretary, Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has a controversial record of suggesting vaccines are linked to autism. So potentially there are political gains in this for Donald Trump, but they come with enormous risk to public health, not just in America, but around the world.
That is David Blevins in Washington, D.C. for us. We'll have much more on that story from our science editor, Tom Clark, at around 7:30. He looks at the evidence behind the claims.
Yeah, and also at 8:30 we'll be speaking to Monica Botha. She's Associate Professor in Social and Developmental Psychology at the University of Durham. She'll be able to give us a deep dive in the latest in all of this, to give reassurance, essentially.
Absolutely. Next, France has become one of the latest nations to formally recognise a Palestinian state after the UK did the same on Sunday. President Macron made the announcement at the United Nations in New York last night. Donald Trump is expected to address the UN General Assembly later on today. Our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn has more now from New York.
After France stole the show yesterday, all eyes on America's president. Donald Trump's UN speeches have in the past made the news for all the wrong reasons. This one will be watched closely for what he says on Ukraine, Israel and Palestine, because he does not approve of what happened yesterday.
I declare that today France recognises the state of Palestine.
The French president leading the way at the UN by recognising the state of Palestine after Britain did the same at the weekend. In London, cheers as Palestine's flag went up over its new embassy.
This is undoubtedly historic, but will it make any difference? Israel says it will retaliate against any further recognition of a Palestinian state. But Britain, like others, says it helps the chances of peace because it gives Palestinians something to hope for.
Britain's Foreign Secretary justified the move as necessary to advance the cause of peace.
For decades, my country supported a two-state solution, but only recognized one state. That changes now.
But Israel denounced the moves taken by France and Britain and other countries as just a performance.
This is a theater because we all know that it's detached from reality. While Macron and his colleagues will celebrate 48 hostages who will stay in captivity.
But Britain and others say Israel has brought this upon itself by working to reverse any chance of a Palestinian state being created, and with it a two-state peaceful solution to the conflict. Tolerating relentless Jewish settler outrages on the West Bank that have killed Palestinians and torched their homes and businesses, often with the apparent connivance of the Israeli military. And refusing to accept a ceasefire in Gaza, where tens of thousands of civilians have been killed. Irish Taoiseach Micheál Martin fears recognising Palestine might not be enough.
And Hamas should release all of the hostages. But this phase of the war, it's a war against a people. It has all the hallmarks of an ethnic cleansing.
Donald Trump is supporting his ally Israel, disagreeing on the matter with Prime Minister Keir Starmer when they met in Chequers last week. The White House condemned recognition of Palestine as a backwards move.
He feels this does not do anything to release the hostages, which is the primary goal right now in Gaza, does nothing to end this conflict and bring this war to a close. And frankly, he believes it's a reward to Hamas.
As the light show in Paris tried to emphasise, France believes its latest move pushes forward the chances of peace. Israel and Donald Trump do not, and the gulf between them and their allies appears to be widening. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, New York.
Sir Ed Davey will urge US cancer scientists to move to the UK in his speech today at the Lib Dem conference. Let's go live now to our political correspondent, Amanda Acas. She joins us from the party conference at Bournemouth. Amanda, morning to you. Bring viewers up to date with a bit more detail on this.
Yes, so Sir Ed Davey will be making his final speech to conference this afternoon, and it seems that he's going to be focusing his attacks on Donald Trump and, by extension, his close ally Nigel Farage, criticising the US administration's anti-science agenda and, in particular, cuts to funding for cancer research. And he's going to be urging US scientists who are affected by that to come to the UK to continue their research over here, suggesting that the Home Office should be offering them cut-price visas in order to come here to further the UK's reputation as a place for scientific research. And also, he's going to be hitting out at long delays, sometimes for people awaiting cancer diagnosis and treatment here on the NHS. I think more broadly, this is quite a specific issue, but what is interesting is how it ties in with the other messages we've been hearing from Sir Ed Davey throughout this conference, principally this attack on Nigel Farage for what he's described as his divisive politics, calling him a plastic patriot who's more interested in Donald Trump than the needs of UK voters. We were all given a little Lego model of Nigel Farage, dubbed this plastic patriot, and urging his followers to reclaim the flag in a kind of wave of positive patriotism. So we've seen a lot of flag-raising, singing of land and hope and glory, which is a bit of a different take from the Liberal Democrats, but clearly their new focus is very much on taking the fight to reform.
Amanda, thank you. Well, let's take viewers now through some of the day's other news. And a British pro-democracy activist has been released from prison in Egypt after the country's president issued him a pardon. Alaa Abdel Fattah, a leading voice during the Arab Spring protests, this is in 2011, has been behind bars for nearly 6 years. His sister shared photos of their reunion, along with the words, "Allah is free." A new NHS initiative called Jess's Rule will be rolled out across England. This is in a bid to diagnose potentially deadly illnesses sooner. The safety rule is named after Jessica Brady, who died of cancer. She was 27 and had 20 GP appointments, and they failed to diagnose her condition. And this will see doctors adopt a 3 strikes and rethink approach to patients whose illnesses they cannot diagnose. Travellers at Denmark's busiest airport are facing delays and cancellations after flights were halted for 4 hours last night. Authorities said 2 or 3 unidentified drones were spotted flying over the airport late last night, forcing flights to be grounded. Residents in the Philippines were rescued from rising floodwaters as one of the strongest typhoons of the year lashed the country's north. And neighbouring Taiwan too, a super typhoon, Ragasa, is bringing winds of around 134 miles per hour and has forced the evacuations of thousands of people. It's now heading towards southeast China, where 400,000 people are expected to be moved out of low-lying areas, rather. Retailers are warning that food inflation could rise to more than 5% and stay there well into next year if new tax rises are introduced in the autumn budget. The British Retail Consortium says thousands of larger stores could face higher business rates under government plans, potentially pushing up prices for consumers.
I have to say that story about travellers being held at Denmark's busiest airport in Copenhagen, I first was alerted to it by our colleague Jonathan Samuel's social media, because he is a flight buff, and I think Jonathan was stuck there himself.
Oh, no way!
Poor old Jonathan. Hope he made it home safe and sound. Now, children sexually abusing other children has become a crisis in the UK. That's according to the National Association for People Abused in Childhood. Sky News has been given exclusive access to the charity's helpline. Alice Porter has this special report, and just a warning, it does feature distressing content, including references to child sexual abuse and exploitation.
Sky News is the first broadcaster to film inside the National Association for People Abused in Childhood.
Take your time, I know it's difficult to have these conversations.
Their support service in Stockport hears from all types of victims. This caller was beaten as a child by his dad, suffering broken bones. He's having to look after his elderly abuser.
It's caring for his father, which is triggering all those unsafe feelings that he had when he was a child.
NAPAC works with the police in responding to group-based sexual offending.
One of the most shocking findings in 2024 is the massive rise in child upon child abuse. So that means within a group-based setting, 2 or more people, 24% of those are children committing serious sexual contact offences against other children. And I would say it's a crisis that's happening now.
The National Police Chiefs Council collates data on sexual offences against young people for England and Wales. It shows that, where age was recorded, over half of all perpetrators were between the ages of 10 to 17. That means in 1 year, over 39,000 children sexually abused or exploited other children. And when there was more than one perpetrator, child-on-child abuse is now the second highest after familial and more common than child sexual exploitation, which includes grooming gangs. The MPCC supports forces in tackling sexual abuse, including child-on-child.
Over 40% of those crimes are crimes that relate to indecent images of children. And amongst those, the vast majority are self-generated images that have been taken by a child, usually a teenager, who shares it with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and that is consensual. Where it changes is when a child is coerced into taking those photographs. Pornography is becoming more violent. Because of that ease of access for a generation of boys in particular, then very often they see that as normal behaviour. We can't criminalise a generation of children. When that behaviour does develop into harmful sexual behaviour, and beyond that quite serious offending, there needs to be a robust response.
A government spokesperson said they are taking forward a wide range of actions to help prevent child sexual abuse, bring more offenders to justice and improve the support available to victims and survivors. There are 11 million people in the UK who suffered childhood abuse. Those on the front line know threats are evolving. With the scale of abuse described as endemic, preventing it is one of our greatest challenges. Alice Porter, Sky News.
Well, isn't that just thought-provoking? And we'll be speaking to the Chief Executive of the National Association for People Abused in Childhood. You saw an Alice's piece there a little bit later on in the hour. If you want to talk about what you experienced in childhood, you can call NAPAC's support line, the number 0808 801 0331, or email support@napac.org.uk. The details on the screen, of course.
Now, a growing list of charities have cut ties with the Duchess of York. After it emerged, she sent an email to paedophile Jeffrey Epstein apologising for publicly disowning him. Let's get more on this. So we're joined in the studio with Ashna Ahurnag. So charity after charity we're seeing now, Ashna, are cutting ties with the Duchess of York over all of this.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, 7 in total at the moment and counting as we hear reports that others are also considering their position, and including one of them, the Teenage Cancer Trust that she worked with for 35 years. This is all over this email that the Duchess of York sent in 2011 to the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted of underage sex and after she had publicly disowned him from knowing him, and he essentially, the email kind of came from her personal account. It was almost a gushing apology, if you like, where she appeared to grovel to him. You know, she humbly apologised for linking him to paedophilia in the press, described him as a steadfast, generous, supreme friend. Her spokesperson at the time said she only wrote that because he had threatened to sue her for defamation, and therefore she was trying to cover her tracks and essentially avoid a giant lawsuit against her. Recently, she has been taken back into the royal household. She's back into the fold, recently appearing. Here she was at, I believe, the Duchess of Kent's funeral only last week. But, you know, it's hard to see how she recovers from this. In essence, it feels as though her life's work is kind of crumbling before her eyes, losing these charity patronages, but also her latest book's out in November. It's hard to see how she'll come back.
OK, Ashna, thank you.
Let's take a quick look at this morning's front pages to bring you up to speed. The Daily Mail this morning goes with a story we've just been talking about, warning of more trouble for the royals as multiple charities sever ties with Sarah, the Duchess of York. The Guardian this morning reports that Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has suggested his party could abolish migrants' rights to stay in the UK indefinitely, even if it's already been granted to them. And just finish off with the Mirror. The Mirror leads with the headline, the NHS record claiming mass deportations could leave the health service without thousands of vital staff members. Let's discuss some of that and plenty of other things with the government now. Joining me here in the studio, Housing and Planning Minister Matthew Pennycook. Good morning to you.
Morning.
We'll get on to your brief in a second and the infrastructure investment that you're keen to talk about this morning. Just on that last point, the agenda at the moment, certainly when it comes to immigration being set by Reform, constantly putting these stories out there, do you need to work harder to remind people how immigration can benefit the country? Because it certainly seems that all this noise makes out that it's all bad.
Well, I think we have been open, and we need to be open about the fact, yes, we have to fix the broken asylum and immigration system we inherited. That's what we're doing. But we've also got to be clear, we need controlled migration into this country, and that migrants who come here legally and make a contribution add something to our society and to our economy. Now, it's absolutely right that when we're looking at settlement, that it's a privilege, not a right. We've set out very sensible proposals in our immigration white paper to ensure that that right is earned. We've proposed increasing the standard qualifying period for indefinite leave to remain from 5 to 10 years, but with an option to reduce that if you're making a clear contribution. We think that's a sensible approach. But Reform's proposals, A, are unworkable. As usual, they've failed to survive contact with reality. The think tank that put the numbers out said that they shouldn't be used. But more importantly, I think it'd be deeply damaging. It would cause a lot of human misery, it would tear families apart, and it would really impact our economy. As you referenced, lots of essential workers who come here through controlled migration routes, settle and are making a contribution, but also global talent coming through. And I think the really extreme proposals they put out, a retrospective ending of indefinite leave to remain. Some people have been in this country on ILR for decades. These are friends, neighbours, husbands, wives. So I think it's both unworkable and damaging. And we will continue to make very clear the benefits of controlled immigration, but at the same time, we've got to get a grip and fix the system. We've got to clamp down on illegal migration.
Let me come at it from two perspectives. If people have been here for decades on indefinite leave to remain, why not make them citizens? Why not give them the British passport? Why not make that more straightforward for them?
There is a process. It's fairly straightforward, and they can go down that route. But some haven't. But they have. But the point of ILR is that they have that settlement. They've got it legally. They've applied for it. As I say, we've put proposals out in our white paper to reform that process. We think it should be extended. We think people should be, earn the right to reduce that 10-year thing through their contributions. But these people who come here illegally, I just think, follow through what would happen. I don't think it's workable, like so many reform policies, but follow through what would happen. Husbands, wives deported, people who are manning our NHS, people who are doing essential work, global talent we need to grow the economy in the country. It's deeply damaging and it's unworkable.
So you would welcome the Lib Dems' idea of attracting cancer scientists from the US on cheaper visas, then?
We're looking at the visa situation for that global talent route. We've got to make it as easy as possible for those people to come in. We want to attract them to take up those jobs. But through the ILR route, we need people that do other essential work. You referenced rightly, our health service and other things where people are making a real contribution and a contribution to our society more generally. As I said, these are our friends and neighbours. These are people who've come through a legal route. They've done everything right and they're making a contribution.
A lot of the problem people have with illegal migration, people coming over on small boats, is they believe they are getting more in benefits than people who are living here already. Why not turn that on its head and allow those people, while they wait for their asylum applications to be processed, to work and pay their way and pay taxes?
That's not the government's position. We think that would act as... for the reasons I'm about to give you, we think it would act as a further incentive for people to come into this country illegally, not through legal routes. And so that is not the government's position. But ILR, as we come back to, that settlement process, which we're seeking to change, increasing that standard qualifying period from 5 to 10 years, is the right way to come in and make a contribution to this country. And we need to attract the right people in, and where they're making a contribution, that should be recognised.
I appreciate your brief is housing and planning, and you want to talk about investment in infrastructure today. You say you're doing a great job of that. Explain how.
Well, in our plan for change, we committed to rebuilding Britain by fast-tracking decisions on major infrastructure projects. And I can confirm today that's exactly what we've done. We've honoured that commitment. We green-lighted the largest number of such projects in the first year of any parliament. 21 in our first year in office, up to 25 now. And that is not just a procedural matter, that has real-world consequences for working people across the country in terms of lower energy bills, shorter commutes, cheaper flights, more secure water supplies. And our ambition is to go much, much further. The previous government only took 57 such decisions in its whole period in office. We've got a target of 150 decisions on these major infrastructure projects. We're on course for that. given the decisions we've taken, decisive decisions. These are not sitting on ministers' desks for months on a time as they were in the last Parliament. We're getting them through the system, and we're making changes to the planning system, not least through the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, to ensure that consenting process for major infrastructure projects is far smoother, far quicker.
And I know some of the planning is around things like wind farms, so it certainly sounds like you're still wedded to net zero aspirations. How does a third runway at Heathrow and another one announced, or certainly the expansion of one announced at Gatwick, lend itself to tackling the environmental crisis?
Well, I think in terms of the government's position on Heathrow, we support a third runway. We've invited proposals over the summer for that, as you know. But any application would have to be compatible with the following. Not only would it have to contribute to economic growth, it would have to be compatible with our legally binding climate change targets. And it would have to meet very strict environmental standards, not least on air quality and noise pollution. So they're the conditions for an application. But the government's position is we want that application to come in.
But growth is your main aim, right? And it's not exactly being achieved right now. So certainly...
Well, I dispute that. We're the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first half of this year. There's lots of other figures I could give you.
And growth now?
And growth now, there is lots of signs to point to growth. Obviously, we weren't going to turn around a decade of stagnant economic growth overnight, but there are the green shoots there. And the proposals I've mentioned today, those 25 projects we've greenlighted, that's a direct contribution to growth. That's tens of thousands of jobs and billions of pounds into our economy. And that's why it's so important that we're making timely decisions. We're making more of these decisions across the country in terms of those large infrastructure projects in particular to get growth going.
Quick change of tack to finish. Are you a dad?
I am a dad, yeah.
Yeah, so you have a partner who's had a baby. You'll be well aware that how much information pregnant mums are bombarded with when they get pregnant. So what's your reaction to Donald Trump in the US linking the taking of Tylenol, or paracetamol as we know it in this country, during pregnancy to autism?
I choose my words carefully here. I think in any policy decision, I do this in my own department, but we've got to be led by the evidence. And the fact is that any such link at the moment is unproven. And it's really important more generally, I'm talking about children with autism, which mine have not got, just to be clear, that we get the right support in place. That's why we've invested an additional £1 billion into the SND system. That's why we're giving local councils an additional £740 million so they can put more specialist provision into mainstream schools. But on that particular point in the President's suggestion, let's be led by the science.
Yeah. Look, I know you're not the Health Secretary, I know you're not the Chief Medical Officer, but that would be your advice to pregnant mums. Follow the science, follow the current advice.
Follow the science. There's NHS advice and guidance on the website about paracetamol use in general.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
OK, let's have a quick look at today's weather now. And it's going to be largely fine and settled this week as high pressure drifts eastwards towards across the country. However, the change in wind direction will bring increasing cloud and a few showers for eastern counties. This morning, early mist and fog in the north and west will clear to sunny skies. There'll be a few showers for the Northern Isles, East Anglia and the far southeast, but it will be a largely dry picture elsewhere. It will be a chilly start with frost in some rural areas. Throughout today, there'll be some good long spells of sunshine. Temperatures will be a little bit below average for the time of year, but it'll feel pleasant enough in light winds. You're watching Breakfast here on Sky News. Coming up, US President Donald Trump, as we just discussed, links paracetamol use, or Tylenol as they call it in the US, in pregnancy to increased risk of autism. We'll have more on the evidence that he is basing those claims on.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Welcome back. You're watching Breakfast with Leah and Matt. In a moment, we'll have more on whether or not the evidence supports Donald Trump's claims of a link between paracetamol, or Tylenol, as they call it in the US, and autism in children. Most doctors say it doesn't.
Yeah, we'll be getting more on that throughout the show. And of course, US President Donald Trump has been accused of fear-mongering after claiming that pregnant women who use paracetamol increase the risks of their children developing autism. Government Minister Matthew Pennycook told this programme just a few minutes ago that we should be led by the evidence, and the advice on the NHS website is that paracetamol is safe. Elsewhere, the number of countries, including France and Belgium, have formally recognised a Palestinian state. They announced their decision will address the two-state solution summit at the UN. And the late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel will return to screens in the US tonight after having his show reinstated by the Disney-owned ABC network. His show had previously been taken off air. This was following comments he made about the death of Charlie Kirk.
Well, as Leah just mentioned there, here in the UK, President Trump's announcement has been condemned by experts as fear-mongering. So here's our science and technology editor, Tom Clark.
So what does the evidence say? Americans consume more paracetamol than anybody else, spending about $4 billion a year on what they call acetaminophen, under the leading brand name Tylenol. And diagnoses of autism have also been steadily increasing in America, from around 1 in 150 children in the year 2000 up to about 1 in 30 today. There have also been a number of studies linking mothers who took paracetamol during pregnancy who went on to go and have a child with autism. But correlation is not the same as a cause. Research into autism in recent decades has meant the criteria for diagnosing it have expanded to include far more people. And there have been a number of recent studies showing no connection to paracetamol at all, the largest of which from Sweden looked at nearly 2.5 million children, huge in terms of public health research. It's why nearly all health authorities, including here in the UK, recommend that paracetamol should be used in pregnancy. In fact, that it's the best pain relief choice there is. In fact, if pregnant mothers didn't use it when they needed it, it could end up doing their babies more harm.
It is the safest option that we have out there, and that actually, while you're pregnant, experiencing uncontrolled fevers or some of the side effects from pain, such as high blood pressure, will be a lot more detrimental to a developing baby and a mother, importantly, than paracetamol will be.
So if paracetamol isn't causing autism, the question is, what's causing the Trump administration to be talking about it? Well, it's a controversial sounding thing that could distract well from genuine controversies going on in the White House. And it aligns well with many of the policies of American Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's long believed an over-medicated America is doing harm to its children. But the thing about science, if done well, is that it doesn't care what you believe, it's what the evidence tells you. And so far, there's been a distinct lack of that behind a lot of the health policy changes in America.
That is our science and technology editor, Tom Clark, taking a look at the situation. Next, children sexually abusing other minors has become a crisis in the UK. That's according to the country's only dedicated support service for survivors. Figures showing cases where age was recorded that more than half of perpetrators were aged between 10 and 17. We're joined now by the Chief Executive of the National Association for People Abused in Childhood, Gabrielle Shaw. Gabrielle, good to see you.
Thanks
for coming in. These are shocking figures, really concerning, especially for people who've got kids of that age. How has this come about?
Yeah, parents are right to be concerned. This is shocking, and I think it indicates a generational shift in the type of abuse that we're seeing. And I think how has it come about? I think children today are exposed to things growing up that we, or previous generations, were never exposed to. Just look at what's online available, freely available now. Violent pornography, harmful online influences, Andrew Tate, the manosphere and others, and the incipient peer pressure that really gets to children. So that's kind of the context that people are working in. And because children have been given the tools through mobile phones and access to social media that we never had, it's quite challenging for parents to navigate this with children because it's a new world for everybody.
I wonder, you're someone that works with survivors, so when you see really shocking stats about the rise of child-on-child abuse, what's your take? How do you feel about those numbers?
It is shocking, but weirdly, I actually feel hope in a weird way, and that's because the more numbers we see, actually, the more we know people are speaking out and talking about the abuse. For so long, at NAPAC, we hear, for adult survivors, we support every year, thousands of them, a sense of shame, of silence, of guilt and complicity. And we know that the recovery begins when people feel heard and believed. So bringing it back to the parents thing, and if your child is at risk or at harm, is things start with belief and start with making sure they can talk to you, because that will actually impact it a lot.
So many questions about this, because, of course, teenage years, as probably all of us know, are those years when you're starting to explore your own sexuality and you're starting to be attracted to other people. We're not talking about that, are we? Let's be clear on this. There are definite descriptions of what this abuse is. It is not kids fumbling around with each other.
No, you're absolutely right. The police recorded data, which looks at all of this. Yes, it's, a large proportion is sharing what we call indecent images of children.
Yeah.
And because some of that could be the experimentation, as you say, but that often involves cases of coercion and blackmail. And then when you go on to what I call contact offences, it's not harmless. That we're talking about rape,
physical harm.
Yeah, physical harm. Contact means rape, sexual abuse, and sexual assault on children. And the most common age of victims is between the ages of 10 and 14, and the most common age of perpetrators, where suspects are known, over half are aged themselves between 10 and 17. So we're talking over half of suspects are teenagers themselves, conducting really serious, harmful assaults on their peers, and that should stop us all in our tracks.
Do you get a sense that there's enough support on offer for recovery purposes?
Well, I would say there's never enough, would I? Because the demand that NAPAC has, and I know that other support services has, is overwhelming. We know that the government has done, the Home Office has done uplift funding, the MOJ has made allowances for this, etc. But what we've got to remember about support is it has to be the right support for you at the right time.
I suppose that's what's key, isn't it? Because if there isn't enough support specifically for the right type of help, that's going to be a problem.
Absolutely, and children, so what we call contemporary children, will need very different types of support from an adult survivor who has carried it for decades sometimes. But what we're seeing at NAPAC, and again trying to come back to a message of hope, is that we're seeing a generational shift. Younger and younger adults, and by adults I mean under the age of 25, are reaching out to NAPAC and others. The earlier you reach out, the earlier that support is.
Gabrielle, this is the road, right? Yes. And what lives on it. And I don't know if you can be specific about certain apps, but we all know, those of us who've got kids, you've got a couple here, I've got a couple who are a bit older, teenage girls at school, there is peer pressure to get on certain apps because that's where they live their social lives. At the same time, we've seen legislation come in that is trying to prevent, well, not just kids, but anybody, right, who doesn't volunteer their credit card details, seeing certain sites. There are ways around that. VPNs are pretty well known about, of course. But do you think there is changes from both the companies who want us to have those apps on our phones and want the kids to have them too, and also the government legislating to prevent harm being seen.
Yeah, that is the crux of the issue right there. The demand from tech, or the desire by tech companies to keep eyeballs on, to keep your attention on it, to make it ever more
And schools
enticing.
are getting on top of that, aren't they? A lot of the schools are stopping kids having their phones during classes.
That's it. And Ofcom, the Online Safety Act, has come in, gives Ofcom more powers to demand age verification and so forth. It's a struggle, and we're definitely not there yet. But the more we talk about it, the more we put pressure on, the better that struggle will be.
OK. Gabrielle, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
If you want to talk about what you experienced in childhood, you can call a NAPAC support line, where Gabrielle's from, on 0808 801 0331, or email support@napac.org.uk. Now, the late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel is going to return to the airwaves tonight, in fact, in the US, ending his 6-day suspension, which became a bit of a flashpoint for free speech in the US. The ABC network had taken the show off the air after Kimmel's comments about the death of Charlie Kirk, calling them offensive and insensitive. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner has more now.
This has come as a surprise to a lot of people. Jimmy Kimmel, who is one of the main late-night talk show hosts here in the US, his show, The Jimmy Kimmel Show, was taken off the air less than a week ago after comments that he made about the alleged assassin of Charlie Kirk. At the time, ABC, which broadcasts his show, said it was an indefinite suspension, but I think a lot of people thought that that was just a cute way of saying that Jimmy Kimmel had been fired. So this announcement now we have from Disney, which is the parent company of ABC, that the Jimmy Kimmel Show will return to the airwaves this evening. The statement says, "We made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. It's a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive. We have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday." Disney didn't say whether all of the local affiliates, so those are the local stations which broadcast in Republican states as well as Democratic states, whether they would broadcast the Jimmy Kimmel Show. We know at least one major TV station operator that controls 38 stations across the United States will not be carrying the Jimmy Kimmel Show. We don't know whether Kimmel will directly address this situation, although you would imagine that he will. We also don't know what celebrity guests, if any, he will have on the show. But this decision to suspend him came after what appeared to be pressure put on ABC by the chair of the FCC, which is the television regulator here in the US, Brendan Carr, a man who was appointed by President Donald Trump, who said that Kimmel had mischaracterised the politics of the man accused of shooting dead Charlie Kirk. But I wonder whether ABC anticipated the size and ferocity of the backlash that has hit them as a result of suspending Kimmel. It appears to have united people across the political spectrum. Even Republican senators, the likes of Ted Cruz, have criticised the suspension of Kimmel. What you imagine will be true is that he will have enormous ratings for his show this evening, and people across America will be tuned in to hear what he has to say.
Martha Kellner in the... That was a quick turnabout, wasn't it?
Yes, from lots of Hollywood stars, you know, urging people to cancel their subscription, to protest outside the HQ. It was a quick turnaround.
Yeah, I wonder if Donald Trump will be watching. Doesn't think he's particularly funny, does he? Still to come here on Breakfast, we'll be speaking to the Liberal Democrats live from their party conference in Bournemouth about that guy who's due to make his speech today.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you.
How are you feeling? Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Connor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention
to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences.
How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute.
We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Connor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death.
Scotland has a shameful record, worse than England, the worst in Europe.
Why not just say you failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder.
Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
Free wherever you get your news. It's over, isn't it?
The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster.
This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country.
A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me. I'm so grateful.
Sky News, the full story first.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it. Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal? Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
I was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about. Join us wherever you get your podcast.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
It is time to talk to the Liberal Democrats now. Joining me is Callum Miller, Foreign Affairs spokesperson, who is at their conference at the seaside. Lovely day for it. Talk to me about increasing immigration into this country in the form of American cancer scientists.
Well, Ed Davey is going to be giving his keynote speech to our conference here today, and one of the things he will be announcing is the Lib Democrats are calling for the government to open up the opportunity for American cancer researchers to come here to the UK. We've seen what Donald Trump is doing in his assaults on science in America, and we know that there are many brilliant scientists there who want to carry on their work but don't anymore feel welcome in the US. And I'm sure that there are many families across this country, if not every family like mine, who've been affected by the loss of somebody in their lives to cancer. We know there are brilliant scientists here, and we want to make it easier for those American scientists who no longer feel at home there to come to the UK and help us in our efforts to beat cancer.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Cancer affects 1 in 2 people in their lifetime in some form or another. Have you been given a steer that some of these cancer scientists in the US that you would like to attract to the UK would actually want to come?
We know that Donald Trump is somebody who doesn't really follow the evidence. And we saw just yesterday this extraordinary announcement in his belief that paracetamol somehow leads to autism for those women in pregnancy. Scientists across America are appalled by having somebody in the White House who doesn't pay attention to the evidence, but also who is rapidly defunding scientific research into some of these areas, and that includes research in America into cancer. So we know that there are brilliant scientists in America who no longer feel welcome there, who no longer feel that their research is being supported, and we believe there's a fantastic opportunity for the UK to attract some of these brilliant minds to help us in our endeavours.
Isn't there a bigger opportunity in keeping Big Pharma in the UK? We've seen the likes of AstraZeneca, for example, pull funding for new investment in Speak in Liverpool, and others decided to take their business elsewhere. Instead of focusing on a small number of scientists, are you not focusing on attracting the big business that gives people jobs here in the UK?
Life sciences are an enormous part of the UK economy, and it's really important that the government has a clear strategy to attract investment. The announcements that we've heard withdrawing funding by AstraZeneca and others are gravely disappointing, especially for those communities which host their production facilities at the moment. But we need to have an open approach to science, and one that makes people really believe, whether they're investors or scientists, that Britain is somewhere that they can pursue their research and see real success, both commercially and in discovering drugs and other treatments that will help people live for longer and avoid terrible illnesses like cancer.
Your leader, Ed Davey, wants Ofcom to investigate X and wants Elon Musk to be answerable for his fight back or die comments that he made to the Unite the Kingdom march a couple of weeks ago. So with that in mind, why does Ed Davey still have an active X account, and the Liberal Democrats do as well?
What Ed was pointing out is that X is a platform on which we know that since the changes that Elon Musk made, unfortunately, illegal content is present, especially content that represents the abuse of young people. And we are saying that he should be held accountable for that. We also know that many folk in the media and in the public are using X as their source of information. And as a political party, we are keen to ensure that everyone is aware of our views.
Let me
it's
come
actually
back at
through
that, Callum
X that
Miller.
we're able to
Let me
communicate
just
some of these policies.
Yeah, let me just come back at that, because Ed Davey was very clear he was making a stand and not attending the state banquet at Windsor Castle in protest at Donald Trump. But when it comes to X and his problem with Elon Musk, he's having his cake and eating it by staying on the platform.
No, I disagree. There's a massive difference between commercialising a platform and making money from misery, which is effectively what Elon Musk is doing, and using a platform to communicate your message, which is what Ed's doing.
There isn't, because I looked at your own account on X and you made a point of stopping posting to it earlier in the year. Your own account directs people to other means, directs people to email you or go on Blue Sky. So you're doing it. Why can't your leader?
Everyone has a choice about how they communicate, and it's about each individual choosing how they're going to reach the audience that they want to reach.
So why did you decide to not bother with X anymore then? Why did you decide to not bother with X?
There's many people who I'm trying to communicate who are very active on Blue Sky, and I feel that I can communicate to them there. But as you know, as journalists, many journalists are still following X and are still there. Ed is on both Blue Sky and X. But I think you're trying to distract, if you don't mind me saying so, from the key point here. Ed's choice about how he communicates to the public is of a totally different order to this question of the type of disgraceful content that is being placed on X by Elon Musk, both the kind of incitement to violence that we saw, but also, just as importantly, Ed has highlighted the fact that child pornography, child exploitation is freely available to people on X, and that's something that Ofcom should be looking into.
I'm not trying to distract at all, more likely trying to draw attention to what people would see as a complete contradiction.
Well, I mean, I think we've rehearsed this at some length. I think the key issue here is that the powerful need to be held to account, and that's the point the Liberal Democrats are making. There are many people on X who perhaps are unaware or shocked by what is happening, and if they receive this message from Ed on X, they're going to be more aware of what's taking place. Our focus is on looking at the ways in which powerful individuals like Elon Musk are corrupting our political system and are being given a free platform to do that because they own the platform. And this interface between commercial ownership and politics is one that we are keen to police and make sure that people in this country are able to enjoy a free, open, fair and non-violent political discourse.
Callum Miller, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
OK, we've all assembled because I wanted to talk about...
Breakfast team assemble. Sounds familiar.
The Ballon d'Or Awards happened last night, and Ousmane Dembele, of course, Player of the Year. But we wanted to get under the skin of some of the picks that we personally, because I'm not entirely convinced by this pick. I know it's controversial, I know he's a fantastic player, but I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about our particular picks. I've got a really keen feeling that Matt would have gone with, I think it was fourth place,
Well,
Mo
look,
Salah.
the man on the screen right now, Ousmane Dembele, is an incredible player. PSG, of course, won the Champions League. They won Ligue 1. He was, I think, the highest scorer in Ligue 1. But I'm sorry, he is not Mo Salah. who is one of the greatest players ever to grace the Premier League. Golden Boot winner last season, won the Premier League as well, of course. I think there seems to be, and I know there'll be plenty of non-Liverpool fans laughing at this, but there seems to be a bit of a bias towards the Champions League. I will accept, though, Rodri won it last year, of course, for Man City, who won the Premier League, and that prompted them.
Sure.
But I think for this man to finish fourth behind Dembele, behind Yamal, is an absolute travesty. And even more so, sorry, you've got me starting now. Alisson Becker, who was our goalkeeper, to finish second.
Oh, my.
To Donnarumma, who was PSG's
Goodness.
goalkeeper, who they've since sold. He's that good. They've sold him to Man City.
I think they're saving it for Salah, for his kind of retirement year, a kind of massive honour before he leaves. And I know the Dembele thing is controversial, but a bit of a turn of fortune for him, perhaps. You know, he had, like, disciplinary issues last year,
Didn't do it at Barca.
No, you're right. But he has proven himself at PSG.
Is he your choice, then,
Well,
Dembele?
I'd say for the men's, I would go with him.
Yeah.
It's the women's is where I have a bit of an issue. I mean,
you got 10 seconds.
OK, 10 seconds. Bonmati, in my words, in my thoughts, shouldn't have won it. Chloe Kelly or Alessia Russo.
Yeah.
High five for that.
Yeah.
Good. We settled that. We've corrected their mistakes. We'll be back with much more on the day's top stories after this short break.
I want to start the programme today with a name, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started. This is your chance. Tell people. This is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No,
but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous.
No one does care about us.
I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
Good morning. It is 8 o'clock on Breakfast today. The medical world turns on Donald Trump after he tells pregnant women that paracetamol causes autism in children.
The government tells this programme that expectant mums should follow the evidence and Trump's claims are unproven.
Plus, the world's best player, that is official now, Ousmane Dembele wins the Ballon d'Or, but everyone knows it should have been Scott McTominay. We'll be talking football a bit later.
Yeah, we have a Scottish producer. Anyway, it is Tuesday, September the 23rd. Back to the important news, and experts tell pregnant women that paracetamol will not harm your baby after Donald Trump links painkillers with autism.
We've got to be led by the evidence. And the fact is that any such link at the moment is unproven.
France becomes the latest nation to formally recognise a Palestinian state. Also ahead, a special report on the UK's only dedicated national support service for survivors of childhood abuse.
Here at the Lib Dem conference, Sir Ed Davey will urge US cancer scientists to move to the UK in his speech later today.
And charities drop the Duchess of York over her gushing messages to notorious predator Jeffrey Epstein. Will the palace be the next to cut its ties? Good morning, thanks for joining us here on Sky News. Now, Donald Trump is coming under fire from medical experts after he said that paracetamol, or Tylenol as they call it in the US, taken in pregnancy can then cause autism in children. The US president said expectant mums should only take over-the-counter painkillers if they have, in his words, an extremely high fever that you can't tough out. The government has told us here at Sky News in the past hour that women should follow the evidence, and taking paracetamol during pregnancy does not harm a baby. In the US, it is, of course, commonly known as Tylenol.
Tylenol during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it, it's not good. For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary.
Yeah, so the US president there linking paracetamol in pregnancy with autism. The NHS says to women that they should continue to take paracetamol. In fact, it does more damage, doesn't it, to tough it out, as the president said, to the baby than taking paracetamol. A vulnerable time, of course, for women. We'll go now to our US correspondent, David Blevins, who was listening to that announcement from the president. He sent us this update.
Even by Donald Trump's standards, his language around autism is unusually emotive. Phrases like, "we've found an answer on autism," suggesting it is artificially induced and framing this as a major medical breakthrough. But there is such a disconnect between that kind of rhetoric and the scientific evidence on this. He's telling people not to take acetaminophen, which is marketed as Tylenol here in America and paracetamol elsewhere when they're pregnant, and suggesting that a drug normally used to treat cancer could be used to treat the symptoms of autism in such a matter-of-fact way. People are likening this to the moment back in 2020 when he appeared to suggest that disinfectant could be placed inside the human body to beat COVID-19. Under fire from the medical world, he's also under scrutiny for the timing of these remarks politically. His administration wants to be seen to implement policy, and a bold move on autism resonates emotionally with families. There's a populist element. It taps into that huge Make America Healthy Again movement, people worried about environmental toxins and the influence of pharmaceutical companies. And it capitalises upon the reputation of his health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has a controversial record of suggesting vaccines are linked to autism. So potentially there are political gains in this for Donald Trump, but they come with enormous risk to public health, not just in America, but around the world.
That's David Blevins in Washington, D.C., summing things for us. Serena's here to tell us what the government in the UK is saying, because we've got to be clear, the advice here, well, on lots of things, not just this, is different to the US.
Yeah, there's a huge disconnect between the rhetoric and the scientific evidence on this, and the government were reiterating that essentially this morning. Experts say that a talk of a meteoric rise is misleading. It's an increase in recorded cases, largely explained by greater awareness, better diagnostic techniques. So despite not being based in fact, there is a populist element here. So the government, you did ask this morning, you asked Matthew Pennycook, the housing minister, and he said we should follow the evidence. This is his exact words earlier.
In any policy decision, I do this in my own department, but we've got to be led by the evidence. And the fact is that any such link at the moment is unproven. And it's really important more generally, I'm talking about children with autism, which mine have not got, just to be clear, that we get the right support in place. That's why we've invested an additional £1 billion into the SND system. That's why we're giving local councils an additional £740 million so they can put more specialist provision into mainstream schools. But on that particular point in the President's suggestion, let's be led by the science.
Now, look, people are entitled to put in their bodies what they want, or not, as the case may be. But we do know that when things are not taken, there can be ramifications. We've seen measles outbreaks, for example, as people haven't wanted to take vaccinations. That's entirely their right. But there can be consequences as a result. I remember old enough remembering the MMR jab being linked by certain doctors who were then struck off to autism, and that being then disproven. But there were then spikes in those diseases that the MMR jab prevents. So there are always consequences to these actions.
Completely, and I think that's rightly why the government say they want to follow the evidence and call that out. I think the language is interesting, though, because it's coming from Donald Trump. They haven't criticised his rhetoric directly. Compare that with how this has been seeping into British politics. At Reform Conference, there was a speaker, Aseem Malhotra. He's actually an advisor to the US Health Secretary, and he had controversial comments about the vaccine, which the Health Secretary Wes Streeting called shockingly irresponsible. So they are calling it out, but I think interesting, different language between who's exactly sort of saying this. Making these claims.
Serena, thank you. We're going to continue this conversation throughout the show, and actually we'll have a leading scientist to talk more about it at 5:30, so do stay with us.
We're going to head back to Bournemouth next, though, and Amanda Acas is there for the Lib Dem conference, and once we see her, you'll realise, honestly, Amanda, I think you took the weather with you when you got there. What a lovely time to be beside the seaside.
It's absolutely gorgeous here this morning. We've got surfers in the sea. We don't believe Sir Ed Davey is among them, but certainly it looks like a really lovely morning for it. Now, he's going to be preparing for his major speech, which will be the finale of this 4-day conference here in Bournemouth later. And we're told that his message will be focusing, partly at least, on an anti-Trump message, criticising the US president for being the biggest threat to the fight against cancer. By extension, also a criticism of his close UK ally, Nigel Farage. He'll be taking aim at Donald Trump for cutting US cancer funding and also for other conspiracy theories that the US president has talked about in the past, which is very relevant clearly today with those comments about paracetamol. He's urging the UK government to try and encourage US cancer scientists who've had their funding cut or who are fed up with what he's describing as an anti-science agenda to come to the UK by offering them cut-price visas. Now, one strand of this is about the Lib Dems' policy on the NHS. They're promising to ensure that everyone who has a cancer diagnosis has treatment within 2 months, trying to put the pressure on the government there. But more broadly, it's part of an agenda throughout this conference to really try and take the fight to reform. He's hit out at Nigel Farage for divisive politics, for wanting to scrap the Online Safety Act. That's part of the attacks we heard over the weekend on Elon Musk, accusing him of a criminal who has broken the law over his handling of child safety on X, and also an attempt to try and reclaim the idea of patriotism. We've seen a lot of flag waving from them here at the Lib Dem conference, and I expect we'll see more later on this afternoon.
Amanda, thank you very much indeed.
Now, France has become one of the latest nations to formally recognise a Palestinian state. President Macron made the announcement at the United Nations in New York last night. And Donald Trump is expected to address the General Assembly later today. Well, our International Affairs editor Dominic Waghorn has more for you from New York.
After France stole the show yesterday, all eyes on America's president. Donald Trump's UN speeches have in the past made the news for all the wrong reasons. This one will be watched closely for what he says on Ukraine, Israel and Palestine, because he does not approve of what happened yesterday.
I declare that today France recognises the state of Palestine.
The French president leading the way at the UN by recognising the state of Palestine after Britain did the same at the weekend. In London, cheers as Palestine's flag went up over its new embassy.
This is undoubtedly historic, but will it make any difference? Israel says it will retaliate against any further recognition of a Palestinian state. But Britain, like others, says it helps the chances of peace because it gives Palestinians something to hope for.
Britain's Foreign Secretary justified the move as necessary to advance the cause of peace.
For decades, my country supported a two-state solution, but only recognised one state. That changes now.
But Israel denounced the moves taken by France and Britain and other countries as just a performance.
This is a theatre because we all know that it's detached from reality. While Macron and his colleagues will celebrate 48 hostages who will stay in captivity.
But Britain and others say Israel has brought this upon itself by working to reverse any chance of a Palestinian state being created, and with it a two-state peaceful solution to the conflict. Tolerating relentless Jewish settler outrages on the West Bank that have killed Palestinians and torched their homes and businesses, often with the apparent connivance of the Israeli military. And refusing to accept a ceasefire in Gaza, where tens of thousands of civilians have been killed. Irish Taoiseach Michael Martin fears recognising Palestine might not be enough.
And Hamas should release all of the hostages. But this phase of the war, it's a war against a people. It has all the hallmarks of an ethnic cleansing.
Donald Trump is supporting his ally Israel, disagreeing on the matter with Prime Minister Keir Starmer when they met in Chequers last week. The White House condemned recognition of Palestine as a backwards move.
He feels this does not do anything to release the hostages, which is the primary goal right now in Gaza, does nothing to end this conflict and bring this war to a close. And frankly, he believes it's a reward to Hamas.
As the light show in Paris tried to emphasise, France believes its latest move pushes forward the chances of peace. Israel and Donald Trump do not, and the gulf between them and their allies appears to be widening. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, New York.
Just a quick bit of breaking news to bring you now. Jaguar Land Rover have announced in the past few moments they're going to extend their factory closures until the 1st of October. They've done that recently because of a slowdown in business and tariffs in the US, not least one of the reasons for that in that car business, of course, a pretty totemic business for the UK car industry. But Jaguar Land Rover in the past few moments have extended that closure until the 1st of October next month, asking their workers to stay at home. We will come back to that story with our correspondent Paul Kelso as soon as we can.
We will, but in the meantime, just let me bring you up to date with some other news now. A British pro-democracy activist has been released from prison in Egypt after the country's president issued him a pardon. Alaa Abdel Fattah, a leading voice during the Arab Spring protests in 2011, has been behind bars for nearly 6 years. Well, his sister shared photos of their reunion along with the words, "Alaa is free." A new NHS initiative called Jess's Rule will be rolled out across England. This is in a bid to diagnose potentially deadly illnesses sooner. The safety rule is named after Jessica, who died of cancer at 27 after 20 GP appointments failed to diagnose her condition. And it will see doctors adopt a 3 strikes and rethink approach to patients whose illnesses they can't diagnose. Travellers at Denmark's busiest airport are facing delays and cancellations after flights were halted for more than 4 hours last night. Authorities said 2 or 3 unidentified drones were spotted flying over the airport. This was late last night, forcing flights to be grounded. Residents in the Philippines were rescued from rising floodwaters as one of the strongest typhoons of the year lashed the country's north and neighbouring Taiwan too. The super typhoon is bringing winds of around 134 miles per hour and has forced the evacuation of thousands of people. As you can see, it's now barrelling towards southeast China, where 400,000 people are expected to be moved out of low-lying areas. Back here, retailers are warning that food inflation could rise to more than 5% and stay there well into next year if new tax rises are introduced in the autumn budget. The British Retail Consortium says thousands of larger stores could face higher business rates under government plans, potentially pushing up prices for consumers.
Just a reminder of that breaking news once more. In the past few moments, Jaguar Land Rover has announced it's going to keep its factories closed for a bit longer, to October the 1st. It was September the 24th. I mentioned tariffs. That was obviously an issue earlier in the year. It's the latest cyber attack on Jaguar Land Rover that's caused issues recently. 33,000 staff affected by that, and that closure of its 3 plants, I believe it has in the UK, extended once more by another week to the 1st of October. So the woes continue for that totemic car maker here in the UK. Next, though, a growing list of charities have cut their ties with the Duchess of York after it emerged she sent an email to the predatory paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein apologising for publicly disowning him. Sky correspondent Ashna Huranak joins me now. And Ashna, Jeffrey Epstein's shadow looms large still over so many people.
I know it's haunting many in an institution, isn't it? Both here and across the Atlantic as well. 7 charities have now severed ties with the Duchess of York, including the Teenage Cancer Trust, who she's worked with for 35 years. Pressure increasingly mounting on her after those reports over the weekend, over an email she sent in 2011 to the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, after he was convicted of underage sex and also after he was publicly disowned by Sarah Ferguson. This email came from her personal account, and it was, in essence, a quite gushing apology. It was almost as though she was fawning over him and appeared to grovel quite drastically. I mean, she talked about having humbly apologised to him for linking him to paedophilia, called him a steadfast, generous and supreme friend, and it appears, on the face of it now, these emails having just been revealed, that she only tried to distance herself to save her reputation. Now, her spokesperson, following this being released, said she only wrote that note because Epstein had threatened to sue her for defamation after the comments that she'd made, and she regretted any association with Jeffrey Epstein. She has recently, though, been invited back into the royal fold, most recently appearing at the Duchess of Kent's funeral, but it does appear very difficult at this stage to see how she comes back from this.
Ashna, thank you very much indeed. Let's return to that developing story that's happened in the past few minutes here on Sky News. Jaguar Land Rover continuing to keep its factories closed for another week until October the 1st. Let's bring in our business correspondent, Paul Kelso, who's on the phone for us, who can shed some more light on this. Paul, the ramifications of this cyber attack are not dissimilar to what we've seen with other businesses earlier in the year, M&S in particular, having huge knock-on effects, and especially to a company's bottom line and its workforce.
Yes, it's after the perhaps the most famous name on Britain's high streets. Marks & Spencer's now perhaps the most important name in Britain's motor industry. Jaguar Land Rover, Indian-owned now, but heavily centred in the UK. More than 33,000 people work for JLR in the Midlands and on Merseyside. And they've said this morning they will continue the closure, which began on September the 1st now, till at least October the 1st, so a full month of closure guaranteed after a cyber attack that has devastated the digital systems so heavily inside JLR that it had no choice, it felt at the beginning, to shut everything down. And that's not just plants here, it's plants too in Slovakia, India and Brazil, the dealership network, the software used to register vehicles, right down to the diagnostic machines for individual cars to establish what's wrong, ordering of spare parts. Everything is shut down. They said at this stage that they would be closed until tomorrow. They've now extended for another week, and they have been moving step by step, a few days at a time with these statements. A week buys them more time to try and get to the bottom of it and establish whether they can begin restarting systems. We still don't know the nature of the cyber attack. Much speculation it's a ransomware attack, as similar to that which happened to Marks & Spencer's. the National Cybersecurity Centre officials from there are involved in helping JLR, we understand, and the Secretary of State for Business, Peter Kyle, and the Industry Minister will both be in the Midlands today talking to JLR and to suppliers. JLR is an enormous business. It made more than £2 billion of profits last year. It's owned by a massive Indian multinational, Tata. It probably has the wherewithal and the cash reserves, frankly, to bear this, certainly for the time being. The real concern now is for the enormous supply chain that provides all the parts that go into JLR's vehicles across the West Midlands and beyond, and how they will manage with these plants work on a just-in-time supply chain, and so if they're not making cars, they're not buying parts. We already know that perhaps 25% of their suppliers have begun laying off staff or asking them to bank holiday, to take time now that they will owe the company effectively in future. And without certainty beyond next week, there'll be questions about how those companies survive. And that is the message I suspect the business secretary and ministers will want to take, that the government stands by to help, but quite how much help they should offer to problems caused by an enormous and very profitable company is a question of debate.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. That's our business correspondent Paul Kelso on that developing story around Jaguar Land Rover keeping its factories closed for yet another week until next week, the 1st of October. Joining me now is Conservative Party Chairman Kevin Hollinrake. Let's start with this, Kevin Hollinrake. Your reaction to the ramifications of this continued closure by JLR because of the cyber attack they've suffered?
Yeah, it's terrible news. I think there's over 30,000 people employed by Jaguar Land Rover directly, and about 200,000 in the supply chain, including in my constituency. A firm in my constituency makes parts for Jaguar Land Rover. So this affects the West Midlands really badly, but the whole nation. This is really bad for JLR and for the UK economy, but most importantly for the people who have been laid off or put on short hours working.
Huge ramifications, as you say, for not just the direct workers, but all those businesses that rely on Jaguar Land Rover buying their services, buying their parts. There's been talk in advance of this latest news of a furlough scheme perhaps being brought in. Would you support that if it was the case, if it's going to affect 200,000 people?
Well, those are difficult decisions that the government's got to make, of course. This is taxpayers' money. You've got to be very careful with it. This is a very profitable business. So it is a responsibility of individual businesses, of course, to protect themselves from cyber attacks, but also make sure they have resilience in the case something goes wrong. So I think it should be the company, first and foremost, who's looking to try and fund the problems they've got, the short-term problems they've got. I think October the 1st it's not too far away, so hopefully this issue is resolved by then and things get back to normal.
It's weeks in already. Every day that passes, that's money they're not making, that's jobs they're not keeping secure. It's a huge issue. And look, and Paul mentioned M&S there as well. It does raise questions as to whether there's been enough investment, because there is a governmental role to play here. There is public money spent on cybersecurity. Whether there's been enough, whether we as a country have taken this issue seriously enough up to now.
Yeah, we've got the National Cybersecurity Centre, of course, that looks at this. So we've got some of the leading experts in the world tackling this problem, but it's a huge problem. And this is often sponsored by rogue states, of course. So you've got very considerable resources being put into these actions by these rogue operators. But there's some very serious people that have huge expertise in this that are very difficult to counter all the time. So I say first and foremost, it's got to be the company's responsibility. M&S managed to deal with us, but it had a severe impact on their business for some time and still does to some extent. And JLR, again, have a responsibility as a private company to deal with it and put measures in place, but also to fund the losses in the short term.
Other people who have a lot on their shoulders at any time are pregnant women, thinking about the ramifications of having a baby and all the advice that they're bombarded with. I don't know if you're a dad, but I am. And I've seen it. Plenty of mums working around here as well, Leah not least. What do you make of Donald Trump in the US last night connecting the taking of paracetamol, or Tylenol, as they call it in the US, to children possibly becoming autistic afterwards?
I think they should follow our medical advice, which is that paracetamol is safe and vaccinations are safe, and it should be as simple as that. You know, President Trump's got his own responsibility for the US administration, but we've got a responsibility for the UK one, and should be very clear and follow medical advice.
Is it bad science in the US?
I have no idea which science he's following. So But it's our understanding that clearly I've got 4 children, and many other people I know have got children, all who had paracetamol during that pregnancy and without any adverse effects. Again, vaccinations are safe. The safest thing you can do to your children is vaccinate them, because there are very dangerous diseases that can follow if you don't. So that's people who should follow the clear medical advice.
We've seen how close an ally the US is, not least last week at Windsor Castle and in Chequers. Is there an issue right now that when he says something, it's not only to the US he's talking, but he's talking to the whole world, and then we have to respond in the way that you just have?
Well, clearly, you know, he's got a voice, and that voice is often broadcast on our channels as well as the US channels. But I think it's been often said we should take President Trump seriously, but not literally. So I wouldn't follow every different statement that President Trump makes and thinks it's something advice we need to follow. I think we just, as I say, we've got some excellent medical practitioners and scientists in this country, and you know, they do a great job in keeping us all safe, making sure our health and well-being is properly looked after, and you know, we're living longer than ever before. So I think we've got some things right, as well as we need to be vigilant against potential future evidence.
Yeah, long may that continue. Listen, just to finish off, I know you've put pen to paper writing letters in the past couple of days, wanting an investigation into funding of Labour that the Electoral Commission investigated 3 years ago and passed judgment on. This is over the Labour Together group that Morgan McSweeney, the now Chief of Staff to Keir Starmer, presided over. But this is something that the Electoral Commission already looked at. Yes, they found wrongdoing, they levied a fine, and Labour say, well, that's old news, what have you got now?
Because they lied to the Electoral Commission. That's what happened. With this, we've had this receipt of this new email that clearly shows that they ascribed the failure to register donations as an admin error. They did that to cover up what actually happened, which was the failure to declare because they didn't want to highlight the source of the donations, so they chose to cover it up. And that's wrong. So they've lied.
The source being wealthy Labour donors.
Wealthy Jewish Labour donor. And because that was sensitive at the time, Jeremy Corbyn was a leader of the party at that time.
Yeah.
And Keir Starmer was seeking to unseat him and take over. They were getting wealthy. They were getting donations from sources they didn't want to reveal.
Have you had a response to your letter, just quickly?
No, we haven't. All the evidence is there, including the email. People can see it on my Twitter feed exactly what the letter says. It's very serious allegations, both for Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff at Number 10, but also the Prime Minister himself. We've now written to the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner because we believe the Prime Minister himself has failed to declare the donations he's received.
As I said, Labour told us they believe there's no question to answer on that.
Well, he definitely hasn't declared those donations.
And it is historic, was what their response was. Kevin Hollerake, appreciate your time this morning.
Pleasure, thank you.
Still to come here on Breakfast on Sky News, US President Donald Trump, as we were just discussing there with Kevin Hollerake, links paracetamol use in pregnancy to increased risk of autism. We will have a look at what evidence, if any, he is basing those claims on.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Welcome back. You're watching Breakfast with Matt and Leah here on Sky News. Coming up, we'll be chatting to a scientist about President Trump's claims that autism is linked to taking paracetamol, or Tylenol, as he calls it, during pregnancy.
But let me bring you up to date with our top stories. And in the last hour, Britain's largest car manufacturer, Jaguar Land Rover, has announced an extension of the current closure of its factories to be at least the 1st of October. Now, the extension will cost them tens of millions of pounds a day in lost revenue as it recovers from a cyber attack. The other big story, US President Donald Trump has been accused of fear-mongering after claiming that pregnant women who use paracetamol increase the risk of their children developing autism. Government Minister Matthew Pennycook told this programme that we should be led by the evidence, and the advice on the NHS website is that paracetamol is safe. And a number of countries, including France and Belgium, have formally recognised a Palestinian state. They announced their decision, addressing the two-state solution summit at the UN.
Well, here in the UK, President Trump's announcement has been condemned by experts as fear-mongering. So here's our science and technology editor, Tom Clark, who's been taking a look at things.
So what does the evidence say? Americans consume more paracetamol than anybody else, spending about $4 billion a year on what they call acetaminophen under the leading brand name Tylenol. And diagnoses of autism have also been steadily increasing in America, from around 1 in 150 children in the year 2000 up to about 1 in 30 today. There have also been a number of studies linking mothers who took paracetamol during pregnancy who went on to go and have a child with autism. But correlation is not the same as a cause. Research into autism in recent decades has meant the criteria for diagnosing it have expanded to include far more people. And there have been a number of recent studies showing no connection to paracetamol at all, the largest of which from Sweden looked at nearly 2.5 million children, huge in terms of public health research. It's why nearly all health authorities, including here in the UK, recommend that paracetamol should be used in pregnancy. In fact, that it's the best pain relief choice there is. In fact, if pregnant mothers didn't use it when they needed it, it could end up doing their babies more harm.
It is the safest option that we have out there, and that actually, while you're pregnant, experiencing uncontrolled fevers or some of the side effects from pain, such as high blood pressure, will be a lot more detrimental to a developing baby and a mother, importantly, than paracetamol will be.
So if paracetamol isn't causing autism, the question is, what's causing the Trump administration to be talking about it? Well, it's a controversial sounding thing that could distract well from genuine controversies going on in the White House. And it aligns well with many of the policies of American Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's long believed an over-medicated America is doing harm to its children. But the thing about science, if done well, is that it doesn't care what you believe, it's what the evidence tells you. And so far, there's been a distinct lack of that behind a lot of the health policy changes in America.
Well, joining Leah and me now is Monique Botha, who you saw in Tom's piece there, Associate Professor in Social and Developmental Psychology at Durham University. It's good to see you, Monique. Let's just expand a bit there on what you said, because science is not exact science. And is this the issue? If there's a seed of doubt about something, it can easily get amplified to the point where that then causes more harm than good.
Absolutely, but I think people need to bear in mind that one, we gather evidence slowly in science. So we do one study, we refine it, we change what we think, we do another study, we refine it. So it's important to look at the quality of the studies that people are drawing upon. And the highest quality study shows that there's no relationship, right? The one that actually controls for family history and for genetics, and we know that it's genetic and largely heritable. And as soon as you control for those things, that effect, that correlation disappears. So I think what people really need to hold on to is that correlation does not equal causation.
But there are lots of people that will hear the most powerful man in the world saying that there's a link between autism and paracetamol take. How damaging do you think his comments potentially could be?
I mean, to be honest, I'm flabbergasted by them because it is so damaging. It's not backed up by science. And paracetamol is still the safest option that we have for handling both fever and pain in pregnancy, right? And those are things that can actually affect fetal development. So someone standing up there and saying these things from such a big platform when it doesn't follow with science, when it goes against healthcare professionals' advice, all of the regulatory bodies, that has the ability to create so much chaos. It muddies the waters for mothers who are pregnant, who are trying to make the best choices for themselves and that baby. And I think it's going to cause a lot of fear. And that, to me, that's unacceptable, especially when we have good answers to these questions.
I think it's interesting to come back to the point about people making false correlations. We saw there in Tom's piece, looking at this, how diagnoses of autism have gone up over the past 25 years. But couldn't that be down to people looking for it more, people realising that it's not just a male condition, but it can affect boys and girls, men and women as well? That's the more likely result of this. And also, just genuinely, is still a bit of a lack of understanding around autism itself.
Well, the thing is, we rewrote the definition of autism, and it's important that we did. The 1980s idea that we have of autism tends to be a child who is non-speaking, who has learning disabilities, and who's usually rocking backwards and forwards. It's a very classic idea of autism, but we rewrote it for the DSM-4 and the DSM-5 because we had learned so much about how many people sit under that umbrella. Right? So I think the important thing is that the definition changed. And it's important that that definition changed because we were missing a lot of people who have some really quite incredibly poor life outcomes that need to be tackled, including in mental health, high rates of homelessness. It's in almost any domain you can think of, it's worse outcomes. So it's important that we expanded it, and that accounts for the vast majority of any increase that we've seen in autism, and we have data to show that, right? So the really important thing is that increase isn't what people think it is. We are just getting better at recognizing it, diagnosing it, and our understanding has changed of it. But I think people see the increase and they panic. And at the heart of this, the truth is that autism isn't something to be panicked about, even though it's become this moral panic.
OK, Monique, thank you so much. Cutting through the noise of what we were hearing from the US administration overnight. Yeah, it really does prompt so many questions, doesn't it? Thank you again. Next. Children sexually abusing other children has become a crisis in the UK. That's according to the UK's only dedicated support service for survivors. The National Association for People Abused in Childhood is warning of a massive rise in cases, with figures showing more than half of perpetrators are aged between 10 and 17. Sky's Alice Porter went inside the charity's call centre.
We've been given exclusive access to NAPAC support service based in Stockport. Every year, they hear from around 10,000 victims. Through here is the helpline. Now, volunteers and staff receive calls and emails from all over the country, and victims could be talking about physical, emotional or sexual abuse. And in many cases, this is the first time they've told anyone about what happened to them.
Well, there you go, and you can see Alice's special report. Click on the QR code right now on the screen. If you want to talk about whether you've experienced a situation in childhood that concerns you, can call NAPAC's support line. The number is 0808 801 0331 on the screen right now, of course, or email support@napac.org.uk.
OK, retailers are warning that food inflation could rise to more than 5%, and it could stay there well into next year if new tax rises are introduced in the autumn budget. So we're joined now by Helen Dickinson, the Chief Executive of the British Retail Consortium. Helen, great to see you as always. Bring us up to date here. So things are not going to get any better, particularly even next year.
Well, what we did is we undertook a survey asking people what their biggest concerns, their economic, their financial concerns were, and prices rising faster than wages was top of the list. There's lots of international factors, whether that's high energy cost or commodity prices, that are impacting that. But some of that inflation, particularly as the Bank of England has highlighted themselves when they held interest rates steady, is being caused by government-imposed costs and some of the tax rises from last year's budget, so the national insurance rise that we saw. And basically what we're saying is that the government's got a choice in order to keep prices low for consumers and use the budget to bring down some of that inflationary risk that we face as we go into next year by making the right choices in the budget this year, and that's all around the changes to business rates, which are planned.
Yeah, don't bite your tongue. Tell us what more changes you'd like to see, because all the mood music suggests things are going to get a bit more costly for people after the budget. I don't know about business, maybe you're hearing different, but what would you really like to see them do to improve, well, everyone's lot when it comes to buying the food and putting it on the table?
Well, the Chancellor will certainly want to protect households and do all she can to enable retailers to continue to help keep that pressure off prices. And the Treasury at the moment is finalising support for the high streets, which is really important to all of us in our communities. And that includes a real much-needed reduction in business rates for retail, hospitality and leisure businesses. But the biggest risk to particularly food prices would be to include large premises, large shops, including supermarkets, in the new surtax on large properties that's being introduced to fund this. So what we're saying is that by removing those large shops from that higher tax that will apply to all other large properties, that can be done at no cost to the Treasury, and that will demonstrate the Chancellor's commitment to bringing down inflation and really help alleviate some of the concerns that consumers have, as demonstrated by our survey today.
But Helen, let me come back. We're talking about some of the biggest businesses in the country, some of the most famous names on our high streets, some shops we all go into. They don't have to pass on the costs to customers. Some of them make massive profits. They could absorb this kind of thing, couldn't they?
Well, what we've seen over the course of the last few years is a cumulative effect of lots of different new costs, whether that was increased labour costs, exacerbated by the national insurance rises, new packaging costs, and all of that has taken us to a point where any further increased costs, we're seeing those filter through to inflation. And that's why food inflation was just 1.3% in August 24. It's now tipped over 5% in August 2025. And the worry is that it will stay above 5% as we go into next year, unless the right choices are made in the budget in November this year. So it's really important for consumers and for businesses, because they've reached that tipping point, if you like. And some of those larger shops, they employ over a third of the people who work in retail and pay about a third of the business rates bill across the industry. So they have a really important role in not just being part of the local economy themselves, but also the ecosystem, the smaller businesses that sit around them, because they draw people into high streets and town centres.
OK, we'll have to leave it there. Helen Dickinson from the British Retail Consortium. Thank you.
Still to come here on Breakfast, we'll be speaking to one of our heroes, Georgia Hunter-Bell, who took home silver ahead of her best mate in the 800 metres at the World Athletics Championships in Tokyo on Sunday. More on that in a mo.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you.
How are you feeling? Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Conor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences.
How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute.
We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death. Scotland has a shameful record, worse than England, the worst in Europe.
Why not just say you failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder.
Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
Free wherever you get your news. It's over, isn't it? The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster.
This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country.
A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me.
I'm so grateful.
Sky News. The full story first.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it. Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal? Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's running out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about. Join us wherever you get your podcasts.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back. Georgia Hunter-Bell took home the silver medal in the women's 800 metres final at the World Championships in Tokyo on Sunday. Her teammate, GB partner Keely Hodgkinson, took home the bronze, making the first time a British pair rather, have won 2 medals in the same event of the World Championships for about 18 years. Pleased to say we are joined by Georgia Hunter-Bell now. Georgia, this is such a fairy tale. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling very happy, very tired. We pretty much went straight from racing on Sunday night to the karaoke bar, straight to the 14-hour flight back home. But yeah, obviously just over the moon.
What was it like having, I know you got a PB, which is brilliant, but having just beaten effectively your roommate, your best mate, because she's Olympic champion after all. And I'm sad to say, of course, that Lily and Adira got ahead of both of you, but we can forget that for the time being. Beating Keely, though, what's that like?
Yeah, it was very close. I think it literally came down to 0.01. So it was a couple of moments waiting for the scoreboard to come up to see who had got it. But, you know, we've been training together all year, and considering how many injuries and stuff she's had this year, I think it was just such an amazing performance from both of us. And yeah, I took a second off my time, and we're both on the top 10 fastest ever list now, which is just amazing for our coaches in Great Britain.
Georgia, what goes through your mind that split second when not only do you realise you beat your Bessie mate, but you've got that silver? Just take us back to that moment. What do you remember?
It's all the emotions. Your adrenaline is running very high. You've obviously just pushed yourself physically as hard as you possibly can. And at the same time, you're trying to mentally stay strong and engage and push past all the urges that your body is, shutting down. So it's a lot to take in, but then it's just pure elation. We were so happy to get on the podium together. And for me, yeah, it was a really just special moment, and that's kind of what makes it all worth it, all the training, all the sacrifices for those moments in the stadium.
We could reflect on this for the whole chat, of course. It would be good to have a look a bit further ahead, because you've now got a bit of a quandary, haven't you? Whether you focus on doing the 800 again, whether you go back to the 1500, which of course you've had massive success with at the Olympics. I mentioned Lillian Odera. There is also Faith Kipyegon, the Kenyans to get past. Is that the focus now, to get past one of them and get gold?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Kenyan team is so strong. I think they did a clean sweep across all the middle distance events from the 800 metres to the 10,000. So they are an incredibly strong nation. But, we have got gold before on the world stage, and we can definitely do it again. So, yeah, the next competitions is just going to be working out what I should be putting my eggs into between the 800 or the 1500.
And then looking even further ahead, really, how much the World Championships shape the Olympics, potentially. Are you looking that far ahead?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the years go quickly. It's already been over a year since Paris last year. So, it does fly by. Before we know it, we'll be getting ready for LA in 2028. And yeah, every year is a learning year. It's a growing year. It's developing your skill as an athlete, getting through the rounds. So, Kelly Holmes did the double Olympic over the 800 and the 1500. So I think it would be extremely difficult. But at the moment, yeah, we're just keeping all options open.
Now, Georgia, I dare say you might be expecting my next question, because you may well remember I used to work with your dad, Andy Bell, of course. Yes, I didn't want to draw attention to it, but it would be rude not to, because it used to be the case that his proudest achievement was working with me. Not anymore, of course. Now you are his proudest achievement, and your sisters, of course. But I did take to WhatsApp to say, come on, Andy, give me a little bit of an inside tack here on anything I can ask Georgia. Being the pro, he said, you can ask. And that's all he gave me. That's all he gave me.
Right.
What I did ask, and I spoke to your mum and dad after the Olympics last year, and they were so proud, and everybody knows Andy's so proud as well. But I did say, look, has Georgia been practising her dip for the line? Because that seemed to be key. And that's what he said, you can ask. So I'm asking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the World Championships events, then every race pretty much came down to a dip. I mean, the men's marathon, after hours of racing, was separated by 0.03 of a second. So it just goes to show how small those margins are at the top. And last year in Paris especially, I was rooming with some of the sprinters and asked them, how do you do the best dip? Because it's really important for their race. So you are thinking about that as you get to the closing stages, and you can see how tight it's going to be. So it definitely did cross my mind. And yeah, practicing for the dip is just as important, I think, as practicing for all of the reps.
It was worth asking.
Yeah,
there you go. Thank you, Dad. It was definitely worth asking.
George, I wanted to ask you your opinion on, we hear a lot about girls dropping out of sport, particularly at the, teenage years. What would be your message, that silver medal at the World Championships, about sticking with it, about not giving up?
Yeah, it's a subject that's quite important to me, because I did drop out of sport for about 5 years. I just thought that I was kind of never going to be my best and went into the working world, but then got back into it and have managed to get Olympic medals. And I just think, how many other young girls are there out there in the UK that could be future Olympians, but they drop out of sport for whatever reason? And I think the main thing is they just need to be practicing sport in a healthy and safe environment. So just making sure that you're training around people in good teams at running clubs where you feel motivated and safe is the main thing. So anything that people can do to foster those environments is just so important.
Georgia, am I right in saying when you came back to it, parkrun played a bit of a part in that, into getting you back into the running groove?
Yeah, definitely. Like parkrun, it's on every Saturday, 9 a.m, it's free. And it's just such an easy way, no matter who you are, what level you're at, to challenge yourself. And I was getting back into running and feeling really strong. And then I did a park run and actually ran a pretty good time. And that's kind of one of the things that made me reach back out to my old coach and say, I've kind of run fairly fast on my own. Do you think you would be happy to coach me again and just see how we can improve? And yeah, now here we are.
There you go. Do park run,
cool.
win an Olympic medal, get silver at the World Championships. An absolute inspiration, Georgia. It's great to see you and just know how proud your whole family are, especially your dad, Andy,
Thanks
who is
so much.
someone I like very much indeed as well. Great to see you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Georgia.
Thank you.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Great question as well about girls and women participating in sport. You see it, don't you? GCSEs, it sort of tails off a bit, and then hopefully people will get it back.
Gosh, it was making me feel like I used to play for Arsenal girls, and I just stopped after the age of 11.
Not Liverpool. What a shame.
Never Liverpool.
What a shame.
But I feel like I'd love to take it up again. A bit of a kickabout after this show, maybe.
I think if you attacked it like Georgia attacked around the 800 metres, you could be playing in the Champions League within 3 or 4 years.
Easy. I'll take that.
Sorry, Ashton. We're not ignoring you. Did you know she played for Arsenal?
I did know that.
Oh, you
She's
did
a very
know that?
impressive woman.
Oh,
and
wow, I love you.
had you kept going, you could have won the Ballon d'Or.
That's
you never know.
That's why you're a pro. You definitely get my vote. We'll be back with the day's top stories after this short break.
I want to start the programme today with an aim, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started. This is your chance. Tell people. This is the politics hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No, I am talking about...
No, but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous.
No one does care about us.
I'm really interested in that. On the politics hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
Good morning. On breakfast this morning, Jaguar Land Rover announces that its factories will stay closed until October, another week after they were planning, following a cyber attack.
The government tells this programme that expectant mums should follow the evidence after Donald Trump claimed that paracetamol is linked to autism in children were unproven.
Plus, we'll speak to one of Britain's most successful authors, Lord Archer, about his new book.
It is Tuesday, September the 23rd. Jaguar Land Rover announces an extension of its factory closures for another week after a cyber attack. Experts tell pregnant women that paracetamol will not harm your baby. That's after Donald Trump linked painkillers with autism.
We've got to be led by the evidence. And the fact is that any such link at the moment is unproven.
France follows the UK and becomes the latest nation to formally recognise a Palestinian state. And charities drop the Duchess of York over her gushing messages to notorious predator Jeffrey Epstein. Will the palace be next to cut its ties? Good morning. Breaking news this morning. Britain's largest car maker, Jaguar Land Rover, faces a prolonged production shutdown after the company announced an extension of the current halt in manufacturing, which began on the 31st of August to at least the 1st of October. That's next week, of course. It comes after the company's IT systems were effectively disabled in a cyber attack and will cost JLR, which employs 33,000 people in the UK, tens of millions of pounds a day in lost revenue.
It's terrible news. I think there's over 30,000 people employed by Jaguar Land Rover directly and about 200,000 in the supply chain, including in my constituency. A firm in my constituency makes parts for Jaguar Land Rover. So this affects the West Midlands really badly, but the whole nation. This is really bad for JLR and for the UK economy, but most importantly for the people who have been laid off or put on short hours working.
We will have more on that with our business correspondent Paul Kelso in the next hour as well. But next, Donald Trump is under fire from medical experts this morning after saying that paracetamol in pregnancy can cause autism. The US president said expectant mums should only take over-the-counter painkillers if they have, in his words, an extremely high fever that you cannot tough out. The government told this programme in the past now that women should follow the evidence here, and taking paracetamol during pregnancy doesn't harm your baby. It's commonly known as Tylenol in the US.
Tylenol during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good. For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary.
Serena's here to talk more about this. That's what a foreign government is saying. What's the UK government saying?
Well, there's a huge disconnect, clearly, between the rhetoric and the scientific evidence on this, and I think the government were trying to make that point. Experts have said that a meteoric rise is misleading. The actual increase in recorded cases largely to do with awareness and better diagnostic methods. So despite this not being based in fact, there is a populist element here, and that's what the government were trying to counteract. So Matthew Pennycook for the government, who's a housing minister, not health minister, but of course reacting to this, said we should follow the evidence, but this is his exact words.
In any policy decision, I do this in my own department, but we've got to be led by the evidence. And the fact is that any such link at the moment is unproven. And it's really important more generally, I'm talking about children with autism, which mine have not got, just to be clear, that we get the right support in place. That's why we've invested an additional £1 billion into the S&D system. That's why we're giving local councils an additional £740 million so they can put more specialist provision into mainstream schools. But on that particular point in the President's suggestion, let's be led by the science.
Paracetamol is safe and vaccinations are safe, and it should be as simple as that. You know, President Trump's got his own responsibility for the US administration, but we've got a responsibility for the UK one, and should be very clear and follow medical advice.
Is it bad science in the US?
I've no idea which science he's following. So, but it's our understanding that clearly I've got 4 children, and many other people I know have got children, all who had paracetamol during that pregnancy and without any adverse effects. Again, vaccinations are safe. The safest thing you can do to your children is vaccinate them, because there are very dangerous diseases that can follow if you don't. So that's people who should follow the clear medical advice.
Yeah, Serena, clear advice there from the government and the opposition. talk to your GP. The advice is there on the NHS website, and that's the clear message to people up and down the country.
It is clear, but I think they were both at pains not to criticise the administration, Donald Trump, directly, and that's going to be an emerging problem. They said we should follow the advice, paracetamol is safe, it's simple as that. But when you asked them about whether it was bad science, they said, I don't know what scientific advice that administration is following. Well, clearly, if it's scientific advice, it should have widespread global consensus. So I think that is the problem. But clearly, both parties are taking this track, just pointing out the scientific evidence, say it as plainly as day, and hopefully people get the message that UK scientists largely back what this government is saying today.
Yeah, all right. Serena, thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Let's return to our breaking story this morning, and the ramifications of a cyber attack on Jaguar Land Rover continue to cause a real headache for what is a totemic British company. They were originally going to close until tomorrow because of the ramifications of this, and that closure has been extended to next week. 30,000 odd employees affected, and hundreds of thousands whose businesses are also related to what Jaguar Land Rover does or doesn't do. Let's bring in our business and economics correspondent, Paul Kelso, who has more on this now. And Paul, the ramifications of this are not to be underestimated, are they?
No, this is an enormous company. It's Britain's biggest car maker by several measures. Hugely important to the West Midlands, here in Solihull, where I am, just around the corner from their main assembly line. Usually around 10,000 people would be making their way in for a shift today, but they're running a skeleton staff. No cars are moving. The assembly lines have run to a halt for a month now. We know they will be closed. August the 31st, the cyber attack was launched on JLR's systems. They realised quite how bad it was over a weekend, and then at the start of September shut down not just operations here in the West Midlands and their plant in Merseyside, but also in Brazil, in Slovakia, in India. Production has not just assembly lines, all their digital operations essentially. Dealers couldn't register new cars, couldn't even use the individual diagnostics machines you plug into a car to establish what's wrong with it or order any spare parts. So devastating to the business, devastating to 30-odd thousand people directly employed, another 200,000 estimated to be employed in the enormous supply chain that serves JLR. When you buy a Land Rover or a Range Rover or a Jaguar, many of the parts in it, the seats, the chassis, the steering wheel perhaps, were made by third parties on very short supply chains, just in time. Is what it's known colloquially as, and if Jaguar Land Rover aren't producing cars here, they're not buying those parts from those suppliers. So a lot of concern about what happens next. I'll just point to JLR's statement this morning. It echoes much of the language we've had in almost weekly statements since the initial attack. But it says, we made the decision to pause production until October the 1st. That's a week today, week Wednesday. We made the decision to give clarity for the coming week as we build the timeline for the phased restart of our operations and continue our investigation. So the investigation is ongoing. JLR here, like many companies that have faced these kind of attacks in the past, don't know the depths to which their systems have been infected, and perhaps still quite what they are dealing with. They've given no details of what kind of attack this was, and as they put it there, they're still building the timeline for restarting. All of that suggests they're a long way from being able to flick a switch and get things working again. Hugely complex. There are cars sitting on an assembly line behind me, half finished, and restarting that whole system across the board is clearly going to take a great deal of time. Ministers will be here today, the Secretary of State for Business, among others, as the government tries to throw its arms around JLR, a hugely important company in Britain, currently brought to a standstill.
Paul, in the Midlands for us this morning, thank you very much indeed for that.
France has become one of the latest nations to formally recognise a Palestinian state. Isn't that true, Matt?
There you are. There you are. Yes, indeed. There we are. You can see us both now. Yes, it's an important one. President Macron made the announcement at the UN in New York last night. Donald Trump is expected to address the General Assembly later today. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, has more now from New York.
After France stole the show yesterday, all eyes on America's president. Donald Trump's UN speeches have in the past made the news for all the wrong reasons. This one will be watched closely for what he says on Ukraine, Israel and Palestine. because he does not approve of what happened yesterday.
I declare that today, France recognises the state of Palestine.
The French president leading the way at the UN by recognising the state of Palestine, after Britain did the same at the weekend. In London, cheers as Palestine's flag went up over its new embassy.
This is undoubtedly historic. But will it make any difference? Israel says it will retaliate against any further recognition of a Palestinian state. But Britain, like others, says it helps the chances of peace because it gives Palestinians something to hope for.
Britain's Foreign Secretary justified the move as necessary to advance the cause of peace.
For decades, my country supported a two-state solution, but only recognised one state. That changes now.
But Israel denounced the moves taken by France and Britain and other countries as just a performance.
This is a theatre because we all know that it's detached from reality. While Macron and his colleagues will celebrate 48 hostages who will stay in captivity.
But Britain and others say Israel has brought this upon itself by working to reverse any chance of a Palestinian state being created, and with it a two-state peaceful solution to the conflict. Tolerating relentless Jewish settler outrages on the West Bank that have killed Palestinians and torched their homes and businesses, often with the apparent connivance of the Israeli military. And refusing to accept a ceasefire in Gaza, where tens of thousands of civilians have been killed. Irish Taoiseach Michael Martin fears recognising Palestine might not be enough.
And Hamas should release all of the hostages. But this phase of the war, it's a war against the people. It has all the hallmarks of an ethnic cleansing.
Donald Trump is supporting his ally Israel, disagreeing on the matter with Prime Minister Keir Starmer when they met in Chequers last week. The White House condemned recognition of Palestine as a backwards move.
He feels this does not do anything to release the hostages, which is the primary goal right now in Gaza, does nothing to end this conflict and bring this war to a close. And frankly, he believes it's a reward to Hamas.
As the light show in Paris tried to emphasise, France believes its latest move pushes forward the chances of peace. Israel and Donald Trump do not, and the gulf between them and their allies appears to be widening. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, New York.
Well, let's take a look at some of the day's other stories now. And a British pro-democracy activist has been released from prison in Egypt after the country's president issued him a pardon. Alaa Abdel Fattah, a leading voice during the Arab Spring protests in 2011, has been behind bars for nearly 6 years. Well, his sister shared photos of their reunion along with the words, "Allah is free." A new NHS initiative called Jess's Rule will be rolled out across England. This is in a bid to diagnose potentially deadly illnesses sooner. The safety rule is named after Jessica Brady, who died of cancer at 27 after 20 GP appointments failed to diagnose her condition. This will see doctors adopt a 3 strikes and rethink approach to patients whose illnesses they cannot diagnose. Denmark's Prime Minister has said that a drone incursion at Copenhagen airport was the most severe attack on Danish infrastructure to date. Authorities said 2 or 3 unidentified drones were spotted flying over the airport. This was late last night, forcing flights to be grounded. Residents in the Philippines were rescued from rising floodwaters as one of the strongest typhoons of the year battered the country's north and then neighbouring Taiwan. The super typhoon is bringing winds of around 134 miles per hour and has forced the evacuation of thousands of people. It's now heading towards southeast China, where 400,000 people are expected to be moved out of low-lying areas. And then retailers are warning that food inflation could rise to more than 5% and stay there well into next year if new tax rises are introduced in the autumn budget. Now, the British Retail Consortium says thousands of larger stores could face higher business rates under government plans and potentially pushing up prices for us lot consumers.
Now, a growing list of charities have cut their ties with the Duchess of York after it emerged that she sent an email to paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein apologising for publicly disowning him. Sky correspondent Ashna Huranak joins Leah and me now. And this is hot on the heels of what happened to Peter Mandelson, Ashna.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is the spectre, the shadow that isn't really leaving either people here on the UK, on the side of the UK, or on the other side of the Atlantic. I mean, this all revolves around the Duchess of York, the Queen of Comebacks, some might say, but this one feels quite messy. There are now 7 charities who have distanced themselves from Sarah Ferguson, including the Teenage Cancer Trust, a charity that's been close to her heart. She's worked with them for 35 years. Increasing pressure around her, though. And even though she's not part of the royal family's kind of immediate household, there is still that hangover that they inevitably will have to deal with in some regard. This all revolves around an email she sent in 2011 to the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. She sent it after he was convicted of underage sex and after she had publicly disowned him, if you will. The email came from her personal account, and this was almost a gushing apology, really, that she was rolling back on some of the comments she'd made. She humbly apologised for linking him to paedophilia. She described him as being steadfast, generous, a supreme friend. It almost was quite fawning and appeared to be grovelling in a way. Her spokesperson at the time said she only wrote it because Epstein had threatened to sue her over her comments and that she regretted any association with the convicted sex offender. She recently, though, has been drawn back into the royal household, back into the fold of the royal family, most recently appearing last week at the Duchess of Kent's funeral. But it's difficult to see how you recover from this one. It feels as though her life is kind of crumbling around her. She's written a number of children's books, and the next one's due out in November. I mean, with these charities kind of pulling away from her, given the fact she is, certainly within that family, I'm talking about her and the Duke of York. Yeah. She's the only one with kind of an income, if you will, an income stream. With this now pulling back, it's difficult to see where she goes from here.
Ashna, thank you very much indeed. OK, let's take a very quick look now at the weather. And it's going to be largely fine and settled this week as high pressure drifts eastward across the country. However, the change in wind direction will bring increasing cloud and a few showers for eastern counties. This morning, early mist and fog in the north and west is clearing to sunny skies. Not bad at all. There'll be a few showers for the Northern Isles, East Anglia and the far southeast, but it will be a largely dry picture elsewhere. Chilly start as well, with a frost in some rural areas. Throughout the rest of the day, there'll be some good long spells of sunshine. Temperatures a bit below average for the time of year, but it will feel pleasant enough in just light winds. You're watching Breakfast here on Sky News with Matt and Leah. Coming up, we'll be chatting to Lord Archer, author of yet another new book. He's got plenty under his belt. It's called Endgame, this one. And it tells, he says, the untold story of the London 2012 Olympic Games and the real-life security threats that meant they nearly didn't go ahead.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
OK, cast your mind back, if you're old enough. London 2012, a great time, actually, and the eyes of the world were on Britain for the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games.
Well, novelist and former Conservative MP Lord Jeffrey Archer has been working with Bob Broadhurst, who was in charge of security of the Games, and it was all part of research for his new book, Endgame.
Yeah, the book unveils the untold story of the London 2012 Games and the real-life incidents and threats that meant they very nearly didn't go ahead. Leah and I are joined by Jeffrey Archer. Now, Lord Archer, good to see you. Although I think you let me call you Jeffrey because you called me Wilf. So we're even there. It's an interesting book because it's a mix of fact as to what could have actually gone wrong with the Olympics and a mix of stuff that you've made up. And what you want is to people to figure out the truth from fiction.
Well, the amazing thing was that we all look upon, you and all look upon, that Olympics are so wonderful. And it was.
A halcyon summer,
and it was almost a great moment in British history because we ran it so well. We do that sort of thing very well. So before I wrote the book, I wanted William Warwick's last book, the final book, him to be in charge of the Olympics. So I flew over to Monaco and saw Sebastian Coe, and he said, "You don't need me. I don't know what happened. You need Commander Bob Broadhurst. He will tell you." So I flew back. And I thought he might give me a couple of stories that would interest people. He gave me 14, 2 of them which would have stopped the Games. He was at one point within 12 minutes of closing the stadium. And it never got on the front pages because that's what they do. They keep it very quiet. But 14 years later, writing his own book, he's decided to reveal it. So you're right, Matt. What I did was I put his 14 in and 7 of my own, totally my imagination. You have to guess which was right and which was wrong, and one of them will horrify you, and it's the one that happened.
OK, well, this is tempting to just say, what is it? Get the book. I know.
Get the book. I grew up in the east of London where the Olympic Games happened. Do you know, I didn't hear a thing about any security risk or threats. So it's a fascinating period.
But isn't that wonderful? I mean, Bob always says, what he says about security, if you say nothing, I've won the day.
Yeah, OK.
If I'm on the front pages, I've blown it. And he got through to the last day without one other thing. And I can give you an example of a tiny one which did get out. In the women's football between North Korea and Portugal, they played the South Korean national anthem. Now, that's a tiny one, but the big one was not small.
Listen, you have put pen to paper for years, and you've written I remember seeing Cain and Abel on the bookshelf when I was young, and stories like that have lived on for a long time. With all your experience, and especially this time mixing truth with fiction, do you think the truth is much stranger than fiction? Do you think the things that really happened you could never figure out or imagine when you were a writer?
My wife always says that in the real world, it's far stranger than you think, and you wouldn't get away with it. And an example happened for me this weekend. I met a very distinguished academic who said to me, "I need to meet Nigel Farage." And I said, "I don't know him. I've never met him. I'll see if I can find a contact to get in touch with him." The following day, yesterday, I met him for the first time. If I put that in a book, you'd go, don't be silly. That was convenient, wasn't it, Geoffrey? You met him on the, you met her on the Sunday, and then you met him on the Monday. You can't get away with it in a book. So what I wanted to do in Endgame was combine the two and leave you to decide what is stranger than fiction.
What did you make of Nigel Farage then, having met him, having been a proud
I was dining with a European civil servant who brings me up to date once every 6 months on what's happening in Europe. I walked in and he was walking towards me and we had a chat and he said to me, you're finished. It's all over. And I thought, wait a moment, it's publication day. I hope you're wrong.
He meant the Tories, of course.
Oh, he meant the Tories.
I mean,
he had an air of confidence.
Though,
he had an air of confidence of a man who obviously sincerely thinks he's going to be Prime Minister. I wasn't left in any doubt. I've seen that aura before. And it wasn't, well, if things go right, well, he was very confident.
So do you think, Lord Archer, that Reform are the biggest threat to the Conservative Party?
Oh, yes, totally. I had one Member of Parliament dining with me last week, young Member of Parliament, come to talk to me about the modern intake. He said to me, he said it on your programme the day after, so I can repeat it, will only be 25 members of the Conservative Party in the next Parliament. I said, what? Repeat that. And he said, 25, Geoffrey. I just couldn't believe it. So I think that's why Farage is so confident.
Yeah, there's a long way to go, isn't there? There's
4 years.
Just under 4 years. You were in Parliament for a long time. I know you left the Lords, although you weren't...
80 years old, you go.
Yeah, yes.
Because you're old and dull and past it.
Yeah.
Do I look old and dull and past it?
You look great.
Yeah. Fantastic. But you left nonetheless because of this reform. Do you think... Look, having participated a small amount in the Lords, do you think it is ripe for reform? And I don't mean the party, I mean actually overhauling the Lords, as Labour says it wants to do.
You've got to look at the whole of Europe. You've got to look at what's happening in France, in Germany, in Italy and in Britain, and realise we live in a new world. When I was a child, 40% voted Conservative, 40% voted Labour, 20% voted for other parties. That's gone. We now have 10% will certainly vote Labour, 10% will certainly vote Conservatives, and God knows where the rest will go. So I think we live in a new world and we've got to react to it. So when he said to me, there'll only be 25 seats, I may have been shocked, but I think it just might be possible.
What would be your advice to Kemi Badenoch right now to try and turn the tide of reforming the polls?
She very kindly rang me last week about Margaret Thatcher's first year. And people think of Margaret Thatcher as the Iron Lady. Her first year was not good. Things did not go well. She got better in her second year. They complained about her voice. They complained about her attitude. They complained about her demeanour. And in the end, you think of, a couple of youngsters like you, think of her as the Iron Lady. No. So I said to Kemi Badenoch, her first year was not easy. And I'll say it here to end on, because I can see that end-on look on your face, Matt.
It's good,
if the Conservative Party are stupid enough to remove her, and we have 5 leaders already in 5 years, and we go to 6 leaders in 6 years, that will be idiocy. She must be given a chance to do the job. Thank you, Matt.
I'm happy being called a youngster. I felt like I was being told off there by Lord Archer. Listen, appreciate you coming in. Endgame is the book. And we had so much to talk about, and just your social life last week filled the time, which is phenomenal. Lord Archer, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show. Do stay with us. We'll be speaking to the parents of Callum Tindle, Draper, a British soldier who was killed in Ukraine just last year. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, we'll hear from the parents of a British soldier who was killed in Ukraine last year. But before that, let's take a look at some of the top stories this morning. In Britain's largest car manufacturer, Jaguar Land Rover has announced an extension of its current closure of its factories to at least the 1st of October. Now, the extension will cost JLR tens of millions of pounds a day in lost revenue as it recovers from a cyber attack. Elsewhere, US President Donald Trump has been accused of fear-mongering after claiming that pregnant women who use paracetamol increase the risk of their children developing autism. While Government Minister Matthew Pennycook told this programme that we should be led by the evidence, and the advice on the NHS website is that paracetamol is safe. And a number of countries, including France and Belgium, have formally recognised a Palestinian state. They announced their decision addressing the two-state solution summit at the UN.
Callum Tindle Draper was a 22-year-old British soldier who was killed fighting in Ukraine in November last year. The non-profit RT Weatherman Foundation helps British or American wounded while fighting in Ukraine and supports the families of those who have died. I'm really pleased to say I'm joined now by the parents of Callum, Stephen Draper and Caroline Tindle, also co-founder of the RT Weatherman Foundation, Andrew Duncan. It's great to see you all. Thank you. I'd really like to start by just finding out a bit more, Stephen, about Callum. What was he like? What prompted him to do what he went on to do?
Well, Callum was a lovely young man, and he was bullied quite severely growing up. And he learnt during his teenage years how to stand up to bullies. And he said, look, Dad, if you don't stand up to bullies, they'll keep doing it to you and your friends. And he said to us, you know, what's going on in Ukraine is really bad. It feels like it's a long way away, but it really matters here in the UK because, you know freedom isn't free. And, we had a lot of conversations about why he wanted to go to Ukraine. And he said, I can't look back on my life and say I just stood by and did nothing. You know, I need to go and help these people because it really does matter.
Yeah. I don't know what, if any, military training he'd had before he went, whether he'd always wanted to be in the forces, or was it the pull of tackling what he saw as the wrong thing, as the Russian invasion being fundamentally wrong and challenging what his beliefs were?
Yeah, primarily it's exactly that, is the latter. It was his moral compass. He could not stand by and not do anything when what he saw was the rest of the world and the government standing by, being complicit in this. He was like, I am not going to be one of those people. I am going to be better than the governments of this world, because it's not just Ukraine. Because if Putin goes through Ukraine, this is actually Europe and then a world problem that we are dealing with.
Yeah.
And if I do not stand up, if I do not go there and stand up to and against what effectively is bullying, it's no different to playground bullying, then I am no better than the bystanders who do nothing.
We've seen Russian drones end up in Poland. We've seen Russian aircraft in Estonian airspace in recent days alone. Nevertheless, so motivated was he by his morals as a mum and as a dad when he's saying to you, I want to go and join this war. And we know how terrible it is. We know how many people on both sides who've lost their lives. What was your instinctive reaction to that?
Honestly, originally, we were heartbroken. Any parent would be, naturally. But this did not start recently. He was mentioning this when Crimea was first invaded.
In 2014?
Absolutely. And he was much younger then. He died at 22. So we had many years of discussion, shall we say, building up to this. He sat us down, he talked us through exactly what Ukraine meant to the world, not just to him, but to the world. So, yes, initially we were heartbroken, as any parent would. We tried to talk him out of it. There was lots of tears, I'll be honest about that. But then you have to stand back and you think, we raised Callum to be like this. And I'm so proud that he could stand up and be honest to us as parents, knowing the pain, the fear, the anguish it would cause us, knowing that the chances are he would not be coming back. We were all realistic about that. And yet still we supported him. Because to know that you've raised someone to grow up with that moral compass, the sense of pride is unbelievable.
There he is. A lovely picture we're seeing there. And Stephen, we hear stories about what happened. He was incredibly brave, it sounded like, fought to the end. His comrades have disclosed that.
Yeah.
How he was, you know, under an onslaught, really, by Russians, and he carried on going right to the end. I have to ask, and it's a difficult thing, and I'm a dad too, no one wants that news, that something has happened to your baby.
No.
When you heard it, it must have been devastating, but we've already seen with Mum the pride in him doing what he believed in. That's how you felt.
When we found out it's, you know, a hole opens up, your life completely changes in a split second. Everything that you know about your life, it changes, and you find, you know, it's a dark hole, and that hole fills with, you know, bad things very, very quickly. And you need to stay really, really strong. But we took some comfort that, you know, Callum had stood up under the most extreme pressure to some of the most extreme bullies, and he hadn't given an inch. He refused to give part of a foreign country to the enemy. And we took pride in that, and that's given us resilience. And then, you know, organisations like the R.T. Weatherman Foundation, you know, they have been a bright torch in a really dark place for us, and they've helped us and guided us through, you know, a lot of some very, very complex processes and complex emotions, and we're really grateful for all the work and the support that we've had from them.
Look, of course, massive impact on young Ukrainians, it goes without saying, but as we've just been hearing there, huge impact on Brits and Americans wanting to help, and that has prompted the creation of your foundation. Tell people more about it, because they may not be familiar with it.
Yeah, so we began in the war on the first day, and we've shipped in $250 million of medical aid to the front lines, and in doing so, we ran into Americans who were wounded who couldn't get out. So there's wounded in action who need help getting out, but there's also killed in action. In the legal process, to be able to go from being a missing in action to killed in action is a legal process within Ukraine. So the families need support with that. So we have a legal team that goes and does all that. We also have a team that's heroic that goes through morgues every day, trying to get matches and match up people and find soldiers that are missing in action, which has been a huge, huge issue for us. So we did that, and then my father fought in the British Army. My family's from Scotland, and we just started picking up people from all democracies. If you're from a democracy, we give you a ride out. We've actually taken 4 dead soldiers all the way back to New Zealand.
Wow. And it's just so sad.
It's brutal. It's
brutal.
absolutely brutal. And I think the death count is grossly underestimated. There are bodies all over the place there. This is a very serious situation. And even if the war was to end today, the cleanup for this, just from the war aspect, never mind rebuilding Ukraine, is going to be a lengthy process.
But we've heard directly there from Callum's mum and dad about the impact on them, Callum's belief, the reason he went there. And as I said to you when we started chatting just a moment ago, plenty feel the same way. But they're also getting online abuse. Yes. Trolling.
Yes.
Worse, perhaps, the focus of terrible behaviour because of what they're doing. It's just expanded on that a bit.
So transnational repression is a big issue. I would like to send out my regards for an early birthday wish to Joshua Wong, who was imprisoned in Hong Kong, who's a dear friend of mine. His partner in Hong Kong is Nathan Law, who is also under a $1 million bounty by the Chinese Communist Party here in the UK, and that many of the families aren't speaking out in the United States and in the United Kingdom because on UK and US soil, they are being attacked with death threats and everything else. So it's a huge gratitude that these folks are willing to speak up on behalf of all the other families who are not so willing to speak up because they're being attacked.
Have you experienced that?
Yes, frequently, yes.
How does it manifest itself?
It's mainly online. A lot of social media. I get private messages, and I would say across every social media. Yeah. There's not one that I don't have it on. And it's not just us, it's the children as well. His brothers get death threats. Used to be daily, not so much now. I still get them on a daily basis. You have 2 options in that case. You can regress back, or you take pride in your son again, and you think, what would Callum do? And what Callum would do is stand up to those bullies. And I refuse to bow down to those death threats. Do
you engage them with these people?
No, there's no point.
You just ignore them. And get on with your day.
Do not feed the troll.
Yeah.
There's no point. They want the reaction. I refuse to give it to them. Just delete and block.
Yeah, yeah. It's insidious, isn't it?
Yeah.
And look, it's hard to know when people are hiding behind the anonymity as to whether it is an individual with some axe to grind or if it's something far worse, or whether it be some sort of rogue state or Russian bots or whoever it happens to be.
No idea.
Yeah, no, nobody has any idea, unfortunately, which begs the question, do you think something needs to be done more about that? We've been discussing it this morning in terms of how social media is affecting child-on-child abuse and the rest of it. I mean, of course, Callum's actions and the ramifications lead us into lots of other areas of questions, but that in particular, Stephen, the insidious nature of social media, how it's had an effect on you and many others we've seen there. Would you like to see the government do more of this? Have they engaged with you on any of this stuff?
Well, yes, actually. I mean, when things first happened, there were some horrible messages. Callum's social media got hacked and got filled with lots of messages. And yes, the government did engage, Foreign Office engaged, and they were able to have those pages, messages taken down and those pages blocked. I think that the social media companies themselves need to be much more aware of what's going on in their pages and, be ready to take action very, very quickly when things that shouldn't be being broadcast. I mean, it's not about free speech.
And let's look at what these guys were doing. They were there. They're not mercenaries. They're not fighters. They're defenders. This is a dictator, a madman dictator, who is assaulting the children of Ukraine. He's putting missiles into children's bedrooms. He hosted a soccer stadium with kidnapped Ukrainian children in sub-zero temperatures in the middle of a frozen stadium. This is an outrageous genocide on the Ukrainian children, and now he has the audacity to come attack the families of those who have fallen in Russia. It's outrageous, and he's got to be stopped.
I totally get what you're saying there. Let's just finish on what you think can realistically be done now. We've seen, of course, Trump meet Putin in Alaska. No material change there. We've seen the coalition of the willing led by Britain, France and others there. We've seen the incursions, as I mentioned before, into Poland and Estonia recently.
I have the answer for that. I think there needs to be one person speaking. It's a negotiation with too many people involved right now, and I am adamant of the view that President Alexander Stubb of Finland should be the point person negotiating this, period, on behalf of the West, period.
Interesting. Final word to you both. To honour Callum's legacy, the bravery which took him to Ukraine, took him to the front line. What would you like to see change now?
Well, I'd say that we just have to remember, are we prepared to, think about the comforts of today or pay the price for freedoms tomorrow? And I think that's something that we all need to think about.
I agree totally.
Thank you so much for coming in. Really good to see you.
Pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. An honour to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching Sky News. We'll have much more after the break.
want to start the programme today with a name, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started. This is your chance. Tell people. This is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No, I am talking about...
No, but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous.
No one does care about us.
I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Welcome back to Breakfast. Now, children sexually abusing other children has become a crisis in the UK, according to the National Association for People Abused in Childhood. Well, Sky News has been given exclusive access to the charity's helpline. Alice Porter has this special report, and just a warning, it features distressing content, including references to child sexual abuse and exploitation.
Sky News is the first broadcaster to film inside the National Association for People Abused in Childhood.
Take your time, I know it's difficult to have these conversations.
Their support service in Stockport hears from all types of victims. This caller was beaten as a child by his dad, suffering broken bones. He's having to look after his elderly abuser.
He's caring for his father, which is triggering all those unsafe feelings that he had when he was a child.
NAPAC works with the police in responding to group-based sexual offending.
One of the most shocking findings in 2024 is the massive rise in child upon child abuse. So that means within a group-based setting, 2 or more people, 24% of those are children committing serious sexual contact offences against other children. And I would say it's a crisis that's happening now.
The National Police Chiefs Council collates data on sexual offences against young people for England and Wales. It shows that, where age was recorded, over half of all perpetrators were between the ages of 10 to 17. That means in 1 year, over 39,000 children sexually abused or exploited other children. And when there was more than one perpetrator, child-on-child abuse is now the second highest after familial and more common than child sexual exploitation, which includes grooming gangs. The NPCC supports forces in tackling sexual abuse, including child-on-child.
Over 40% of those crimes are crimes that relate to indecent images of children. And amongst those, the vast majority are self-generated images that have been taken by a child, usually a teenager, who shares it with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and that is consensual. Where it changes is when a child is coerced into taking those photographs. Pornography is becoming more violent because of that ease of access for a generation of boys in particular. Then very often they see that as normal behaviour. We can't criminalise a generation of children. When that behaviour does develop into harmful sexual behaviour and beyond that quite serious offending, there needs to be a robust response.
A government spokesperson said they are taking forward a wide range of actions to help prevent child sexual abuse, bring more offenders to justice and improve the support available to victims and survivors. There are 11 million people in the UK who suffered childhood abuse. Those on the front line know threats are evolving. With the scale of abuse described as endemic, preventing it is one of our greatest challenges. Alice Porter, Sky News.
And of course, it goes without saying, if you want to talk about what you've experienced in childhood, there are numbers you can call. Details are on the screen now, including that email address.
OK, next, the latest episode of the Trump 100 podcast looks at the US president's claim that the main ingredient in paracetamol causes autism. This episode delves into the extraordinary press conference last night.
Science has strongly suggested that there are probably thousands of genes involved and that they interact with lots of environmental factors. So the fact that we now have the president telling women to tough it out if they can is not only irresponsible, it's potentially very dangerous, because if a woman has a fever, particularly in the first trimester of pregnancy, toughing it out could be dangerous, not only for the woman herself, but also for the unborn baby.
Martha and Mark there on that fantastic podcast. If you want to have a listen, well, you can find it in the usual places, of course, or scan that QR code just below Donald Trump on the bottom right of your screen. OK, it's not Sky Sports News, but we're going to talk about football nonetheless, because last night the Ballon d'Or was awarded. Several awards were awarded, actually. Best male footballer, best female footballer, best goalkeeper, best young player, etc., etc. Always causes a lot of discussion afterwards because Ousmane Dembélé won for Paris Saint-Germain.
You agree or disagree with that?
I strongly disagree. He's a very good player. Thanks for putting me on the spot, but I'm happy to take more time up talking about my love for Mo Salah and Liverpool Football Club, who came fourth in the voting. Now, Ousmane Dembélé is an amazing player, but Mo Salah is a player for all time, one of the Premier League greats. I think he's closing in, possibly on third in the goal-scoring chart, continues to do it. Won the Premier League last season, of course. And also Alisson Becker, the goalkeeper, came second in the, I think it's the Yashin Award, isn't it, after Lev Yashin, that famous goalkeeper, to Donnarumma, who now plays for City, because Paris Saint-Germain thought he was so good they sold him. Anyway, I'll stop ranting on.
We're just looking at each
Ashna's
other.
here. I'm talking over Leah because she's an Arsenal fan, so it's irrelevant. But Ashna's here. What do you think?
Well, you mentioned the Yashin Trophy. Just a shout-out to Hannah Hampton. It was the inaugural Yashin Trophy that was given to a woman for the first time, and she won that for England. So I think that's pretty significant. And she gave quite a powerful speech, lots of people talking about it on social media.
Well, she had such big shoes to fill after Mary Earps retired quite late before the Euros, didn't she? And an amazing performance. Serena Wiegmann, of course, won the Coach of the Year as well, didn't she?
The only thing in the women's category that I'm a bit miffed about is Chloe Kelly wasn't the top award winner there. I just think, come on, who's voting here? Who are the actual judges? Because it wasn't us.
They're all journalists.
You know, she was the super sub, wasn't she? She was the one that rallied the team to such historic success. So I'm sort of unsure.
And it was that winning penalty, wasn't it, this summer? I mean, no one can forget it. So I'm here with you on accepting that too. Alicia Russo came third in the kind of voting of it all. She's another one that goes under the radar too.
Yeah.
But it was a real shame. Yeah, Chloe Kelly also thought Leah Williamson stood a good chance of being there captaining, you know, obviously the winning team this year for the Euros. But no, it was Bonmati, the third-time winner.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know where Lucy Bronze came, but I think she's probably my favourite England footballer because she's just been at it for such a long time. It's just, you know, hard as nails, steel. But look, fair enough. OK, Ousmane Dembélé, amazing player, won the Champions League, won league, high scorer as well, runners up to Chelsea in the World Championships as well. We're going to carry on chatting about this. I think you can keep watching Sky News with Jane Secker after the break while we continue to put things right here. Bye for now.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.